Welcome to the Good Old Blades podcast. I am your host, Aaron Levere, and join me as we talk to other knife makers and craftsmen about anything and everything knives. John Steinbeck said, "Texas is a state of mind. Texas is an obsession. Above all, Texas is a nation in every sense of the word." Out of that Texas ideal, a nation of knife makers, scrimshanders, engravers, saddle makers, blacksmiths, bladesmiths, sheath and holster makers, spur makers, guild members both Texas and national, ABS journeymen, and mastersmiths, the list goes on, have collectively brought some of the best craftsmanship to the world. It's true that everything is bigger in Texas, and through my observation of the moving and shaking that's happening inside of the great state of Texas in regards to knives and all the peripheries, I wanted to showcase a few makers that are constantly cultivating the smithing and knife-making craft within the Texas Knifemakers Guild and in knife shows across the nation. You'll get to meet Don Sylvest, Frank Machado, James Huse, Jeff Davidson, Jack Thatcher, and Eland Green. All great craftsmen and vocal advocates of the craft within Texas, and we talk about their lives and experiences that pushed them to create, that stemmed from conversations that happened at the Lost Pines Knife Show in Bastrop, Texas. Don Sylvest of Bar S Bar Handcrafted Knives started his life in the swamps of southern Louisiana. As an avid outdoorsman for over 50 years, a rancher, game warden, lawman, and bodyguard, Don has pulled deeply from his experience and passion to produce a knife that satisfies the needs of the outdoors and is built to last a lifetime. With his son Travis, who makes beautiful leather goods, and the sheaths that safeguard Don's knives, the duo work to push each other and have a father-son dynamic to be envious of. Don, it's a pleasure to have you on the Good Old Blades podcast.
Thanks for having me on the podcast, Aaron.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your past life before knives and retirement and things like that, what you did and kind of what led you into getting into making knives?
Yeah, I grew up in Louisiana many years ago, and back in the mid-'80s, the first oil crisis we had, there was no work in Louisiana, and followed work over into Texas, and how I came to move to Texas. And fast forward to 2016, I guess, we're talking about getting into knives. One of my sons came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, let's take this wilderness survival class." And so I said, okay, we can do that. And growing up in Louisiana, trapping and hunting and fishing, we always had knives and everything. And I told him, I said, "Hey, I'll just make us a knife." And so I made us a couple of knives for the class. And we never did take the class. And fast forward a couple of years after that, he come to me one day and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to make your sheaths for you." So he started making my knife sheaths, and Grizzly 2 leather was started back then. Kind of go backwards for a second. Back when I came to Texas, I had gotten out of law enforcement. I was in law enforcement in Louisiana as a game warden. Coming to Texas, I got back into law enforcement, spent 20 years in law enforcement in Texas, and ranched while I was in law enforcement. I was in rural law enforcement. In 2000, I moved into corporate America, and I got into the security industry, doing executive protection. Layman's terms, I was a bodyguard for probably 15, 16 years. I guess having grown up in the swamps and the piney woods of Louisiana, I feel pretty blessed. I've been in 6 continents now, probably close to 50 countries, and then I've been in every 50 state in the union.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So got into knife making. I really enjoy it. It's a great pastime. Since I've retired, I've kind of gone full time making knives now.
Yeah, that's good. I'm interested to know a little bit about your game warding experience and everything like that.
as a hunter fisher, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, we need to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's on everything because of game wardens and getting you caught for things that you might not know that you are actually a problem. It's like that was entirely in Louisiana. I mean,
Yes.
what is it like enforcing laws in Louisiana like that?
So I'll probably give my age away. I started in law enforcement a week after I turned 19. Semi-automatic pistols weren't even around, or they were exclusive at the time. We used revolvers back then and everything. And when I first went to work as a game warden, we were only allowed to enforce the conservation laws, and we only had conservation radios. We didn't have, we had a hard time being in contact with the deputies, sheriffs, the police department, state police, and that sort of thing because of the radio bands were different back then. And then growing up in Louisiana, the attitude was, I'm going to hunt to eat, and game warden, the heck with the game wardens.
Yeah.
They didn't poach to sell some people would sell meat, but most of it was to feed themselves and that sort of thing. So seasons were salt and pepper. So it was always, and I remember I have a story whenever I first got hired as a game warden. We went to our regional office, and the captain had us all in there, and he called me out, and he said, Sylvest, he said, you're going to have this guy that squirrel hunts just before season. Okra comes into harvest just before squirrel season, and that's a great dish to eat in Louisiana, a smothered squirrel and okra. And he said, you're going to have this problem, and I know that you're going to have a problem catching this guy. And so we got a little closer, and another meeting, he said same thing. He just kept reiterating how difficult it was going to be. And I told him, I said, Captain, we're not going to have that problem anymore. And just before squirrel season open, we're going to have a problem with this guy. Every year, he said, I've been after him and haven't been able to catch him. Captain, you're not going to have that problem anymore. And after squirrel season opened and everything, we were in at our regional meeting, and something came up, and he said, that guy didn't hunt this year. And I kind of smiled. I said, Captain, I told you we weren't going to have the problem anymore. And it finally dawned on him who the problem was. And I lost a lot of friends when I became a game warden because I kind of changed my mindset and really realized what we were doing and how to be better with manage our conservation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's a double-edged sword, I think, to being an outdoorsman and also trying to balance out the law and also balance out conservation, because there's lots of law that's based on conservation principles and whatnot, but there's also lots of laws that are based on bureaucracy, and it's really difficult, because you in the outdoor world, I feel at least like you have to always balance out these things, like the way that you feel about stuff, but then
Absolutely.
Respecting the law just because it is the law, and also the fines are pretty heavy.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And yes, you're right. We had people in Louisiana that would travel up to Mississippi and poach. And the Mississippi state laws were a lot more stringent than the Louisiana laws were back in the late 70s, early 80s. They would seize your truck, they would seize your guns and everything. And they were especially hard on out-of-state people, especially people from Louisiana, because they knew the reputation that a lot of people had and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's also interesting to me in some ways, because at the same time, I respect the law because, especially when it comes to game wardens, because of the severity that it's enforced. I've also respected times when game wardens have been very kind to me. Like, for instance, I was on this canoe and I was on a local lake and didn't realize that I had to have life vests in a canoe and that I had to have a permit to be on the lake because of the launching and everything. I thought that, if you launched off the bank like you can with a canoe, it's not the same as having a normal craft that you have to use the dock and everything for. And so I was there and I was out fishing one night. I was planning a whole day of fishing. And I was on the other side of it, and the game warden stops me and it's like, so where's your life vest? I was like, say what? And he's like, you'd be surprised how many people we pull out of this lake every season because of no life vests and everything. Apparently a lot of drowning deaths on the lake. And he didn't say anything about the boat slip. He asked where I put it in, and I said it on the bank, and so kind of let that pass. But he said, no, like you're gonna have to have a ticket, but what I want you to do is paddle across this lake again, and if you can go get you a life vest down at the store, then you can keep fishing. So he said, and if you do those things, right, he gave me a life vest, made me paddle across the lake again. I went and got one. He said, just put him in the back of my truck. I'm sure he did it so that way I complete the circuit and give him back his stuff.
Sure.
But then, I took the ticket and contested it. He never showed up. I didn't contest it. I just said, hey, I did these things. This is what we talked about. And it got dismissed. Yeah. And he didn't have to give me a way to follow the rules and then have an out, right? Because that ticket was about $500 ticket.
Yes. Yeah. We when I was a game warden, we would catch someone poaching, say, rabbits at night. In the state of Texas, it's legal to shoot rabbits at night. In Louisiana, it's not. You would catch someone with rabbits and even an occasional deer. And if you knew the family and knew that there was a hardship there, it's kind of like, well, you have to write them a ticket. You have to uphold the law and write a ticket. But we had enough leeway in where we could turn the meat back over to them and have them sign a receipt for the meat, and still, odds are, and I hate to say it now, but I guess we're so far along that back then the way the law worked in Louisiana, they'd probably get dropped charges. The local judge would drop the charges anyway, and they would still be able to have the meat and to feed their family and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
come to Texas, I got back into law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I spent another right at 20 years in law enforcement in the state of Texas as a deputy sheriff.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. How do you think that translates, like the knowledge that you gained in that industry, to what you do in knives today?
Growing up in Louisiana, I did commercial fishing. I did commercial trapping. Everyone pretty much has a trap line, or did back then. The fur industry Louisiana was one of the largest fur-bearing states in the United States back in the 60s and 70s. So you used a knife for skinning fur out. You used a knife for hunting, and growing up in the country, we processed a lot of our own meat, our own pork and beef and that sort of thing. So you use a lot of chef knives for that. A knife I've always had a knife in my pocket or on my belt. Pretty much all my life, about. And kind of, knowing the function, the ergonomics of it from different uses of it has helped me in making my knives in it.
Yes, sir. How I'm interested kind of a little bit in like the world of corporate bodyguarding and things like that, because I don't really know that very well. Do you have any like particular stories or anything like that from that period of your life that are interesting or that you can talk about?
So, being in that industry and traveling, and one of the things that I did as well is I oversaw a security driver training program worldwide. And I traveled worldwide supervising a couple of driving instructors that taught security driving. Going to the different countries and I'd already started in knife making. I'd gotten into knife making while I was doing that. It piqued my interest to look at different knives in different countries and that sort of thing. So you look at some of I've been to the Middle East and looked at some of the knives that are carried in the Middle East and that sort of thing. Some of the most interesting stories, I've been to Africa. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Mozambique. I've been to Nigeria. And we were in Nigeria, and with turmoil going on in the country, attacks going on in the country and that sort of thing, we've had convoys that were armed convoys that were attacked, and I was sent over there to look and see what we could do outside of the box as far as protecting those convoys and stuff. So some of that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and kind of one of the reasons why I ask is because in cybersecurity, there are some concepts around security risk mitigation where we actually follow some of the same principles that they do for the presidential motorcade.
Yes.
And the proximity and stuff like that.
Yes.
So basically, we take that same concept from a physical security perspective and apply it to technological assets. And so there are some presidential assets and things like that. And to me, it's fascinating that we have this cross-pollination and security technique.
Yes, correct. And to your point, a lot of our training and such originated with Secret Service and some of that sort of thing. So same way, we go out and do an advance and look at where we're going, that sort of thing. Look at our standoff footprint and what's where, who's where, and such. And there's probably, it's not as much risk in the United States. I guess the risk in the United States is disgruntled employees, activism, and that sort of thing. But when you travel, whether you travel to South America, and I've been to South America, a half a dozen countries in South America, or to the Middle East, or to Asia, then you have to start looking at terrorism as well. So, it brings on a whole new concept whenever you do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, every once in a while on like Facebook or whatever, videos have come up where, somebody's driving down the interstate and then all of a sudden they get corralled and trapped off like a truck or something like that. And you have all these like ransom and stealing that and taking the people and doing stuff with them and then the cargo and everything. And sometimes I just wonder, it's like, why don't you just use your vehicle as a weapon and blow past it? But
you're absolutely right, though. That's what you should do. And that's one of the things that I did is overseeing the instruction of it's evasive driving. It's where do you park? How do you park the car when you pull up behind another car? How far should you be behind them so that you can allow yourself an opportunity to get out and stuff, get away? And all of that comes into play. And Hollywood has this great concept that if you run into the back of somebody, you're going to knock them off the road. Well, that's not going to happen if they run into you straight on from behind, if you're managing your driving. But if they hit you from the side or something like that, then there is the possibility. So So there is all of that.
Yeah, to me it's fascinating. It's like, I know it's not necessarily knife related, but like in that concept is similar in some ways of like figuring out what the cause and effect is to certain things that we do in knives, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Like if I think about it, like the way that I grind this thing or the position of something affects like the physics of it. And it's like I have to think about whether this is going to break in a situation or what the quality control is. There's like I see that when we live our lives, there's a lot of similarities in the concepts of security and integrity and things like that. That you can take that and then use that cross-disciplinarily and in other aspects of your life.
Oh, I agree with you. You're absolutely correct. When you're making a knife, you're thinking of the same integrity, the same. What's the word I want to use? The concept, the basis for doing it and doing it correctly and taking those steps is the same as if you were doing, say, executive protection, so to say, is I have to take a necessary set of steps to get the end result. And it's the same thing in the knife making. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And, what are the knives going to be used for, and then taking the steps to get it there.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed that like a lot of hunting and cutlery stuff is on your table. Do you do a lot of like tactical style things for that previous experience that you've had in
I do a couple. I've recently started making folders, liner locks, and so that'll probably come along more my tactical style of knives, a tactical liner lock style of knife.
That's fascinating. Then you said your son is in leather, right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. Like, for me, anytime I have to have leather done by somebody else, I always have to think about like the overhead, right?
Sure.
And I'm sure, I mean, obviously having like your son have his own business and whatnot, there is overhead, but what's it like working with him, and do you find it challenging ever?
No, he's actually, we work really well together. We always have. When you're right, there's a lot of overhead, and where you have when you have a sheath maker, you send the knife off, so you're paying shipping, to get it back, you're paying all these other costs plus the cost of the sheath and everything. And I know that there are knife makers out there that make their own sheath. It was never a desire of mine, and it will probably never be a desire of mine to make my own sheaths. And having him do it has been really nice. He lives relatively close to me. He knows, I know that if I need 10 sheaths next week, he'll knock it out. He'll stop what he's doing and he'll work on my stuff and get it. He doesn't make a lot of sheaths for the public. Mm-hmm. He makes a lot of other and it's really a cool story. Is Grizzly 2 Leather is Travis Sylvest on Instagram is what it is. And it's really cool that we started this as a father-son type deal to go on a trip together, to do something together. And then it morphed into him making sheaths for me. And now he has grown to where he makes bags, other leather wallets and money clips and the whole 9 yards, everything. Mm-hmm. So it's been pretty cool. And we're still doing those father-son things because we travel to shows together and we share tables and we're side by side and that sort of thing. Yeah. When I was in law enforcement, I had a ranch on the side, and I had right at 200 head of cows. And he lived with me and helped me with the cattle. And he and my dad, before my dad passed away, did quite a lot with the cattle. They fed the cattle in the wintertime when I was working and that sort of thing. So we've always had that father-son work team ethic and everything. So it was a difficult transition.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I like on the periphery, I see y'all's relationship. Whatnot, I'm a little bit jealous for the ability for you to work with your son, since I lost mine, and it's a beautiful thing to see, and I respect it a lot. To me, it seems like those moments that you have together when you guys are doing those things that. It has to be a lot of fun. It is
a lot of fun. So we hunt together, fish together, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you and be able to understand a little bit more about your life. In the context of this show that we're at now recording, I think it's a great concept to talk to other makers, and I'm really honored that you could spend the time with me. We'll have to sit and talk a little bit more at a future episode, give you some more time where we can talk about some other concepts and things like that, because I want to pick your brain on things. But thanks for spending your time with me and talking.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
My next guest is James Huse, and he's been a bladesmith for 23 years. He's an ABS journeyman smith and a Forged in Fire Season 1 and Season 4 champion. James has also been a longtime champion of sharing his knowledge and cultivating an environment of learning, inspiration, and mentorship for everyone he interacts with. James, in his art through knives, is constantly evolving, but his iconic knives represent a stylization that is deeply rooted in Texas culture. His focus on both user knives as well as themed knives has elevated his craftsmanship to heirloom quality, made to stand the test of time. James, thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
I appreciate it. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, thanks. I know I ask this all the time, and I'm particularly interested in what got you into knives, because I really don't know a lot of your backstory into it, to be honest with you. I'm interested to know what got you into the thing that you're doing now.
Well, I've been doing this for going on 23 years. Professionally for the last 10. Maybe a little bit more. But I started in the fall not the fall, but the winter of 2001. And I just wanted to see what it would take to make a knife. So a friend of mine, Clint Brock, and we went to garage sales and we'd pick up old knives and we would rehandle them.
Mm-hmm.
Just put new scales on them or put them back together. Did that for about a year and then started making our own stuff. Using hacksaw blades to cut out our steel, files to cut our bevels, things like that, and really determined to make a nice knife. And they were very ugly in the very beginning. 23 years ago, there was no real community that you could search for. So reading Blade magazine, looking at the tips and tricks that the Blade magazine used to have, which back then Blade magazine was 90 pages long and not just 30 pages. No, there was 160 pages long, and it's now reduced to 60 or 70 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It used to have a whole lot more how to do it content. And I've got many books, the Master Bladesmith, the Master Blacksmith, and you got other books that the Wonders of Knife Making.
Yeah.
You read books and you just try it. But I wanted to see if I could make a good knife, because I got tired of buying knives that were made overseas, and got better at it. Started getting opinions from people and meeting mastersmiths and aspiring to be as good as a mastersmith. And that's what you've got to do. You can't just be satisfied where you're at. You've got to get other people's opinions, and you've got to have a hero or such, something to look up to. I want to make knives like him. And you surround your inner circle with people that are better than you if you want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so just the curiosity of making a knife, I can do it, is what got me started. And now I'm a good knife maker. I'm not the best, but I can hold my own against some of the people that are really, really experienced knife makers. I've read plenty of books. I've taught many classes. I've taken many classes from several people, and people that don't take classes have a harder time making knives because they don't learn the tips and tricks. And anybody can learn anything from anybody as long as they're open to the fact that there are different ways of doing stuff. And that's what makes the community great as far as Texas Knifemakers or America in general, is that people are willing to share their knowledge of the craft just to better it and to expand it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something that I've been really proud of is the growth of knife making holistically in Texas over the amount of time that I've been on the scene. Like, it even seems within the last 7 to 10 years, there's been a humongous not only interest but a lot of really great talent inside of Texas. I mean, we're a show where I can go buy a lot of tables and see just incredible work.
Right.
But I think when you did that Gamblers, the Gamblers set, it's just called the Gamblers.
Get
the Gamblers. Yeah. I was really intrigued by, I don't know what you don't call that a theme knife, right? But
it was a very theme specific knife. I mean, it was a 4-knife kit or 4-knife set, but it had what they would consider keyhole bolsters, where you remove a shape from a bolster, then you inlay the wood into that.
Yeah.
But each of the shapes were different suits of the deck of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, nobody had ever done it before, and I wanted to see if it could be done. So I worked on it until I got the pieces to fit. But building that set, I kept that set for 3 years before I ever sold it, because it was such a industry specific. I mean, somebody had to like poker, somebody had to like knives, and I had a custom deck of cards made for it that were made from the actual ink money made from.
Oh yeah.
Same holographic material. And the person who designed the deck of cards and had them made, excuse me, lived pretty close to me. His name is Jackson Robinson, and that's his business, is he designs cards for bicycle.
Oh, that's cool.
And he designed a deck of cards for me, and I had poker chips, custom poker chips made from a company out of Las Vegas, and they were real money. You could cash them in if you wanted to, but it was a very poker specific thing.
Yeah.
And it was a collaboration of 4 people. I made the knives. Wes Griffin did the engraving. Carlos Pena made the sheaths for me. And then the box was made by, forgive me, I cannot remember his name. But the box was made by another knife maker.
Yeah.
But it was a labor of love. But that's the kind of knives I want to make. I mean, I make my everyday normal stuff, but when I have an idea, like any maker, you build something because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build, and this is going to be expensive, and I'm going to keep it for a long time before someone buys it. But if you build something with the expectation of selling it right away, you're in this business for the wrong reason. You do it because you like doing it. Because nobody in their right mind thinks they can go out and make a living making knives that people don't need.
Yeah.
So
it seems to be the theme, right? I think that maybe my motivations originally for getting into it was that I could have supplement income, right? And I was interested in knives. I was making knives before I really invested in more equipment and things, but there's a difference between doing knives as a hobby and then doing knives even as a part-time, because the reality is that your investment's high, and even like trying to get into selling knives, I think that happens through osmosis more than it does because you specifically try to sell a knife.
Right. I mean, you get into knife making as a hobby. So you want to do it. Then you realize real quickly that I cannot just keep putting out making knives, because you always want bigger and better equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't keep going out of pocket buying all this stuff. And you realize handle material is expensive. Steel, of all the knife making things that we use to make knives, steel is the cheapest per capita of any of the supplies that we use. Mm-hmm. Belts, consumables you go through belts, dozens upon dozens a month. And they're not cheap.
Yeah, no.
So you start selling your knives to help offset some of the cost. And then you get better at it, and people want to buy more. And then it's just a snowball effect that, man, I can't keep up. And then, so you up your prices a little bit to try to pull back. I mean, they keep buying them. It's like, man, I'm making some good money here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this way. And then all of a sudden it drops off. It's like, what happened? I was doing so good. It's an up and down roller coaster.
Yeah.
When then you think, I fired myself 4 times this year, but I keep having to rehire myself because I still have to pay the bills.
Yeah, it's insanity. It really is. I mean, with the gambler, I think that probably in my mind made me think more about my own knife making and kind of some of the things that I want to do thematically, mm-hmm. right? Like if I can take some artistic constraints and make something that expresses an idea, what would that look like? And mm-hmm. I guess the thing is like well,
you're trying to take a mental, like you said, an idea and turn it physical. Mm-hmm. Something it's hard to express because you can see the picture in your mind. It may just be a theological idea.
Yeah.
But now you're trying to turn that into a physical something that you can hold. And whether that's a spiritual idea or whatever. Now, but that's the fun part about it, because nobody can tell you what that looks like. That is your idea. Mm-hmm. All they can do is, if they see something, a technique that you're using, hey, how about you try this technique to achieve the same goal, but they can't tell you what you're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like about knife making. There's no right or wrong. There are some, yes, right and wrong, black and white rules for basic fundamentals, but outside fundamentals, it's all art.
Yeah.
And do what you want to do. As long as people like it, then they like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah. I think that like the self-discovery and self-esteem component of knives is the most important, because, customers are ancillary, but you have to be
You have to be in it, in order to be able to express yourself and then to produce anything. And if you can't be, or you doubt yourself constantly. Well, I mean, I doubt myself all the time, but it's one of those things where I think that like you have to be invested in your own ability to create things in order for stuff to happen.
Well, people pick up on that. Customers pick up on that. If you don't have the confidence in yourself that you're building, whether it's pretty, ugly, or whatever, then as long as you doubt yourself, you're never going to grow. You got to push. It may be hard, but you've got to push yourself. If you want to get better, you got to push yourself. If you're doing something that you don't know how to do, and you're not willing to take lessons or ask people because you want to, quote unquote, be all by yourself,
yeah,
you're never going to make it. It's going to be a long, hard road, to achieving what you want to achieve. But the moment you doubt yourself, you've now taken 2 steps back. Just keep pushing forward. If you don't know how to do something, keep doing it until you can. That's all I can say about that. Just that if you just are too scared to do something, you're never going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my understanding, so you're a junior or journeyman smith.
I'm a journeyman smith with the ABS.
Yeah. What was that process like? Because I did forging before and a lot more blacksmithing,
right,
but some bladesmithing stuff. And then when I got frozen shoulder, I hung that up, thinking that it was so hard for me to think that my shoulder would ever be working again the way
right,
that it should to be able to swing a hammer. Luckily, within the last year, I've really kind of come to the realization that I can do it again.
Use a lighter hammer.
Yeah, lighter hammer and machinery instead
Yes.
of just having everything where I'm heating and beating it completely.
Right.
But so I joined as an apprentice,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking with Brad Jansen about his journey through JS and whatnot. Like how, what do you feel like the process is like? I mean, what do you like? What do you dislike? I mean, I don't want to put you on a spot to air any grievances.
No,
but
the grievances are neither here nor there because they have their process and they're an organization that's been around for 46 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you join the ABS as an apprentice, but master smiths aren't going to search you out. You got to search out a master smith, befriend a master smith, and hopefully get a chance to work under a master smith or whatever. But you find somebody that you admire and you admire your work, and you learn to ask questions. Don't think that they owe you anything. You're still there to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever before I ever became in the ABS, I was friends with Harvey Dean. And he was one of the very first master smiths that I ever became friends with. So when I joined the ABS, and I joined the ABS a couple times, but recently, 2015, that's where I've stuck with it. And I told him I joined as an apprentice and I'd like to pursue my journeyman smith. And he said, the first thing you need to do is learn how to forge a knife. Start to finish. Forging the bevels. You want to look flat. And he specifically told me, we're looking for this type of knife. No brute to forge. We're looking for, do it in your own style, but we're looking for specific knives. We don't care what you make now, but we're looking for this because they have a standard. And it's hard to judge a standard off of everybody's different styles. So they're looking for not specific styles, but they're looking for more traditional style knives. Western style knives, things like that. And he goes, you can make your own handle shape or whatever, but the blade shape is what we're looking for because we're looking for forging techniques. So I'd started forging that way. And the first thing you got to do, once you've put in your 3 years, you got to put in a minimum of 3 years before you can test for journeyman smith. You forge a 10-inch bladed knife, 15-inch overall. When I did it, it could be full tang, it could be hidden tang or full tang. Now they changed rules where it's for journeyman smith, it's full tang. And you put a guard, you put a handle, and the knife has to be heat treated in a way that you got to cut a 1 inch. You got one swing, one chance to cut a 1 inch rope with one swing, 6 inches from the bottom of the rope or as close to it as you can. They don't want you to cut 1 foot. It's got to be within pretty close to 6 inches because they're looking for control. and that shows edge geometry. If you can cut a clean rope, it shows that you're got a good edge and you got a good geometry to cut through the rope. Then you take the same knife and you chop a 2x4 in half twice, and that shows edge holding ability. And then they look at the edge, make sure there's no deformation to the edge, no rolled edges, flat spots or anything. And then Horrigan was my journeyman master smith, and he chose a section, 2 inches or so. Said shave with this section. So you got to shave that section. If it doesn't shave, you fail right there. If it does pass, then you lock it no more than 3 inches from the tip of the knife, and that knife has got to survive a 90-degree bend. It doesn't have to come back to straight. It just can't break. Mm-hmm. And that of all the tests, everything we do, the bend test to me seems unnecessary, because nobody's going to stick their knife and bend it in anything. And I've talked to other people, and I'd rather see a torque test. Say, okay, lock your knife into a vise 3 inches, and we're going to assert maybe 75 foot-pounds of torque to it. Maybe make a limit, 75, 100 pounds. It can be 100 pounds torque, and once it clicks, you come back up, and now we're going to see how straight it has come back, mm-hmm. and give them a range. That, to me, that's more useful, because if I bend my knife so what if it can make a 90-degree angle? It can, that to me, that knife is useless at that point. But if I can put 100, 125 foot-pounds of torque on it, and it comes back to true, that is a useful knife. That means I can really pry with that sucker, and I still have a useful knife after the fact.
Yeah. That's
one of the things I would change about it. But the tests have been around for 40 years. Mm-hmm. And, they've had their standards. But getting someone to change the idea of what, the use of a knife, because you can make almost any steel, if it's heat treated properly, do that bend test, but the torque test is something different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder to a certain extent whether it's the tradition of the bend test more than it is the actual
Well, it is. I mean, it's tradition. I mean, it's been around, like I said, 40 years.
Yeah.
But once you pass that, they sign off on your paperwork, and then you submit your paperwork to Cindy Shealy or whoever the secretary is at the time, mm-hmm. and they say, okay, you passed. Now, if you fail that test, you can test again in 6 months. But once you pass, then you can go to the next available blade show, which is Atlanta. Every year it's Atlanta. And then you build 5 knives. Mm-hmm. In Journeyman Smith, it's all mono steel, no Damascus, clean, hand-sanded knives. And then they look at them. A panel of 7 judges will look at them and tell you what you did right, tell you what you did not wrong, but they tell you what you need to work on, and they judge. They're looking for a fundamental standard, mm-hmm. to see whether you're good enough to go on to Journeyman Smith. They're looking for straight plunges, making sure the plunges that you cut are the same shape. Not that they just line up. They want to see if they have initially the same arc. Mm-hmm. They're looking for fit and finish. Handle construction. Is it comfortable? Is it symmetrical? Is the blade straight? Does it line up all the way through the handle? There's a lot of fundamentals that you don't want a handle straight than the blade to kick off to one side.
Yeah.
That's just fundamentally wrong. Anybody can look at that. There's no history that there's a knife that's kicked off. It has to be straight, otherwise it's not going to be a useful tool. Mm-hmm. And that's what they look at. And you get people in there that want to put their own idea into it, and they use their idea of their skill. Oh, this guy should be here. And that's the problem. It is still subjective. It's still a subjective judging, because there's no written down standard. Well, I was here when I was at this stage, I was making it this way, but you can't do that. And that's one of the things about the ABS. They don't have a written standard, so it's hard to judge on whether you're there or not. You're basing the ideal off of mastersmiths to look at your knives. Mm-hmm. And when I passed my Journeyman Smith, they all love my blades, they love my handles, but they all hated the shape of my guards. But they don't have anything written down on what shape the guards need to be. They just need to be symmetrical. There can't be any gaps, and it needs to be clean finish. Mm-hmm. But every one of my tickets says passed. Hate your guards, which is fine. From that lane, I ask questions. What did you not like about my guards? Well, they were too thick, and they were just ovals. Just a plain oval, clean, sanded guard. There's no character to it. And I said, okay, now I can take that and build my knives later, more toward my style. But as far as the judging goes, you didn't say you wanted any specific shape, so they can't judge on that.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, I mean, with Mastersmith, they require the Quillian dagger.
The
which,
Mastersmith is a different test. The
Yeah.
Quillian dagger is a very specific knife.
Yeah,
And that's the only one that has to be Damascus. The other ones can be monosteel, the other 4. And then the bend test knife, same exact process, but it has to be made out of Damascus steel, 300 plus layer,
yeah,
or 300 layer minimum
Yeah.
Damascus steel. It's a harder test because it has to be hidden tang.
Mm-hmm.
And if the tang bends at any point of the test, you fail.
yeah,
So, I mean, you've got to learn your heat treat at that point. You got to learn metallurgy. You got to know blade geometry. You know, because you want the knife, you don't want it to break, but you also don't need that tang to bend. So it can't be real stiff.
mm-hmm.
And if that tang bends, you fail.
Yeah,
Whether the knife breaks or not. It's a little bit of a heartbreak when things don't go your way the first time around. So.
yeah. Well, yeah, I guess in life I've been used to disappointment, but there's some ways where I think in knives it's real hard at times. For as much as I don't know, for as much as it, it doesn't matter in some ways, in other ways it does. I don't know why. It's this weird psychology to it.
It is. It's a psychological. I mean, I've talked to many people. Hey, are you ever going to test for jerk? Because even Texas Knifemakers Guild, we have our Lone Star membership, where you submit 3 knives, we look at them, but we have a written standard.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're honest with yourself about your knives, you can grade your knives yourself. So many people, very, very, very few people look at that and grade themselves. We don't hide anything. We don't try to tell you how to build your knives. Read the piece of paper, judge your knives yourself. As long as you're honest, you can get a pretty accurate idea of whether you're going to pass or not.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tool that we offer to the makers, to our members. Nobody utilizes it. And then they get surprised if they submit 3 knives and they fail.
Yeah,
Did you read this? Well, yeah, I read that. Then why didn't you at least do this minimum? It's not hard. Well, I can't. At that point, I can't protect you.
yeah,
It ain't like we're not hiding anything. We're not some secret society here trying to keep people out. We want to teach you how to see your knives in a different light.
yeah,
And until you can see the flaws in your own work, you'll never be a good knife maker. You won't be able to see anything. And that's what we try to teach. That's the fundamental thing we try to teach people in the Texas Knifemakers Guild, is how to see your problems. Don't trust anybody else to tell you the truth. You got to trust with your own eyes what you're seeing.
yeah. Well, it wasn't too many years ago that I put in for Lone Star at ICCE. It was last year. It was in the stockyards, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been making knives in a vacuum. It was just in my shop. I would admire other people's work, but I was just really kind of like, trying to figure out
It's a
learning.
boring way to make knives.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I think I got a little feral because I was really concerned having my knives judged. I was thinking about all the things that could be wrong with it and all the things that anybody would say. Real self-conscious. And I had looked over all the guidelines for the Texas Guild and had done that. I was like, well, I need to make sure that like all these examples of things not to do, I need to make sure that they're out of there. And what was interesting is that I think Jason Fry looked at my knives and he was like, here's like the things that I would change. I was like, well, and it was kind of like that interaction was done. And I was like, well, wait, so did I pass or not? He's like, oh yeah, no, you're good or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And
when we say that, we're just seeing things that we see as makers, having more experience that you can change about. We're not telling you have to, but to make the knife more fluid, to flow better, to make the knife more attractive, because it's a balancing act. of what you could do. It's just suggestions.
Yeah.
And my knives, when I first started making knives, I made them the idea the way that I thought I needed to make a knife. If you've looked at the evolution or the adaptation, the changes of my knives, they've completely looked different from when I started because I started listening to my customers.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this knife, but the handle hurts here. Well, make a note.
Yeah.
And, oh, I love this handle if it was just a little thinner here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a compromise. I really like designing knives, but I've got to listen to my customers because I'm not going to buy every knife that I make.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
So you've got to, I'll only make the knives that I want to make. No, you make the knives that sell. And if you want to do this long time, and if you only make the knife that you want to make, you're not going to make knives for very long because they're not going to be comfortable. They're not going to look good. You got to trust your customers to tell you what they want to see from you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also what you're saying is a different concept entirely from the maker who is outside of the box about design,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because most everybody learns the fundamental truths of knives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the form and the function. And then after that level of mastery has been obtained, then they go and play.
Right.
They learn what the baseline is, and then they can play. But you have some people, I've seen some real interesting cats make some real knives, and I was like, it's just not at all practical. You know?
Right. I mean, there's practicality. Yes, that knife it's a very artsy knife. It looks good, but how practical is the use of the knife? Do you want them to go out and use the knife, or do you want them to be a wall hanger?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to find a happy medium there that, man, this is a really nice, this is a really, really unique shape, really unique grind. And it is very useful in a handful of tasks, but there's a fine balancing act there. There's been funky knives built historically for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
that had one purpose. When that knife was built and designed, or sword or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
one purpose. For the most part, we try to make knives that have multiple purposes, and it's just really hard to do. I want a knife that cuts always perfectly every time if I go and decide to chop up brick with it. I'm sorry, that ain't gonna happen. You know. So you try to incorporate as many uses as you can into a knife, but sometimes it's just real hard.
Yeah.
And when people come to me, customers, and say, "I've got this idea for a knife." Okay, let's draw it out. Well, I don't know how to draw. Can you explain what you want? Not really. I just got an idea. I'm sorry, I'm not the man for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not going to play this game because the stranger your idea is, the more expensive that knife is going to be, because if you can't get it out of your head, I'll never be able to make the knife that you expect.
Yeah. That's true. And I mean, that's the common problem with custom work is, you have technically we all exist in this handmade space,
Mm-hmm.
but then some of us also live in this custom world. And even the amount of stuff that I'm willing to customize is not as extensive as some makers. Like I stick within patterns. I modify patterns that I'm comfortable with. I know how they perform. But if you want to do something that's really out of the box, that's a harder thing for me, because I think about, I still want to be able to produce a knife that in all ways, shape, and form performs the way that I think it should. So that's difficult to say no sometimes, or to even work with customers on creations like that.
And I'm the same way. I like making my handmade stuff that I know is useful. If someone comes to me with a custom design, I do very, very little truly custom work. And again, if you can't draw it or describe what you want, I can't make it. And I'm not willing to put in the time to build something that you're going to be ultimately dissatisfied about because it isn't what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
But I can't read your mind. And to me, if you really want the knife, I could care less what you use it for. You just want the knife, but you're going to pay for it because I don't do things for free.
Yeah.
And the more I have to work on this thing, and the more times I have to do things over, it's going to be ultimately more expensive. But again, if you can't describe it, and you can't design it, and you can't do this, then I can't build it. You've got to be in a very artistic person to build something. And if you come up with it looks like a flaming blade with curves and bevels everywhere else, I'll build what you can draw, and we'll discuss the design. But it's that whole fast, cheap, good kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to take me time to build it, and you can't bother me about it. You know.
Yeah.
And I'll share my steps with you, and I'll show you pictures along the way. And if there's something you don't like, then you better tell me now, because I'm not moving on. If you say, oh, it looks great, and then by the end, oh, I really don't like it, I don't care.
Yeah.
You're still paying for it.
Yeah. Oh man, I like knives because there's always something to chew on.
Every shape has been made historically. There's nothing really you can come up that's brand new, that's never been made before. But it's the oldest tool in history. It's been around for thousands of years. It's a useful tool. As long as you use it as such, it can be a weapon if it's stretched out, made into a sword. The cutting edge is the most useful tool we have, whether that be an axe, a chef's knife, a hunting knife, a sword, or anything. That's what built this country, or built the world, is the cutting edge. So
yeah. Well, James Huse, the knife Buddha from Buda.
No, not Buddha. I am from Buda, Texas.
Yeah.
And I am just a humble man. But
I've always appreciated you because you've always been very insightful and an inspiration to me. I think about our conversations, and there's lots of stuff that I can pull from it, and I think about it. So I mean, like in so many ways, you might not know it, but you're like you mentor me in knives, and I've always appreciated that about you. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
I appreciate it too. Thank you very much.
We'll have to do this for a longer version where we can really get more into the philosophy and whatnot too, because I think we would probably spend quite a bit of time talking about different aspects of knives.
Well, we could go through and talk for hours about different ideas of knives.
Yeah.
It's such a large industry, and there's so many different aspects of knives, you know, that you could have a whole podcast or whatever just talking about the styles of knives.
Yeah.
You know, culinary, EDC, Bowie knife, the history of the Bowie knife, the history of the sword, what kind of sword, where is it from? You know, it's just.
Well, yeah. Know. I mean, I think about that a lot. Like, you know, I am focusing on one very specific corner of podcasting, and that's the motivation to create, and knives is that medium, right? Because arguably a lot of us could be any other type of creator in physical goods, engravers, you know, everything, right? Carpenters. But why knives? And, you know, it's interesting to me, like kind of what stems into that. It's just all these tendrils. So, you know, we'll have a full episode again and talk through all that stuff, and, you know.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Frank and Nita Machado of F&N Metalworks and Two Bastards Texas Smithy and Supplies have been a driving force within the Texas bladesmithing and blacksmithing community for almost 10 years, supplying restored and handmade hammers and other tools. This dynamic duo has gotten so good at their vocation that many of the hammers used in Forged in Fire bear the souls of their hard work and passion for the craft. When they're not in their smithy, they are exuding Southern hospitality at hammer-ins, shows, and in a way that makes one feel like family. I got the chance to sit down with Frank while Nita tended to their table and talk about the great works that him and Nita are doing within the community. Frank, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you finally.
Thanks for inviting me on. We're honored to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit before we hit the record button, we were talking about, you know, kind of your backstory. And I want to know more about like kind of what drove you to where you're at now, and what that parallel is with, you know, hammers and knives and what you're doing in your shop and everything.
I'd always thought the blacksmith world was fascinating. You know, whether you're making knives or you're making tongs or you're making camp cooking kits. I've always thought that was just absolutely fascinating. So one day I said, I'm going to learn this. And there's a local college up in Dallas that on Thursdays and Saturdays do a blacksmith program. So aside from my regular job in the medical field, I went up there and started taking classes. And I'd already forged a hammer and knew I was going to have an issue with this because I was doing a lot of restorations. I do a lot of restorations from Austria as well as a lot of domestic stuff. And I wanted a very specific design of hammer. And my mentor, Kelly Kring, Master Blacksmith, said, make one. I said, well, I'm not a hammer maker. He goes, you've made a hammer, make one. So we made a couple. And he said, these are great. You need to make more. You got a demo coming up. I want you to sell your hammers, the restored and the new stuff. So we came up with some different designs, and from there got invited to another demo. From there, I met Cowboy Szymanski of Phoenix Knives. Mm-hmm. He came up and said, hey, me and my wife, my family, are thinking about doing our first Forge and Fire knife show at the backyard blacksmith shop of Phoenix Knives in Belleville, and we'd love you to be the hammer vendor. So great honor. He didn't charge us anything because he didn't know how it was going to go. Yeah. Now it's just a monster show. Yeah. And we're honored to be vendors and sponsors of that show every year since. So we went there, and again, it was amazing. And it was the first time I actually met all these Forge and Fire guys. And we're having dinner with them and finding out what they liked and disliked most about the knife world, because I knew I wanted to get in and be able to provide them products that they could use, hammers in geometric shapes that they enjoyed, that made their world easier. Because if I can make what you do for a craft, what you're doing to pay your bills, what you're doing that brings you pleasure to create, if I can provide a product that makes that somehow easier, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So they're giving me ideas on coming up with prototypes and selling every single one of those prototypes to each one of these Forge and Fire guys that had asked for it. So it started growing from there. We started meeting more people, doing more shows. And then the first time we had a couple of hammers on Forge and Fire, we couldn't believe it. Now, you couldn't see our logo because they don't do that on the show. They take the logos off if you want to use our hammers on the show, or any hammers with a deep etch like ours. No free advertising. So we thought, okay, this may actually turn into something. And that sparks more orders, and that sparks more orders. And now it's 6 years later. First week of December will be the 6-year anniversary of our business. F&N Metalworks, Two Bastards, Texas Smithing and Supplies. And we will be by April, by the Belleville show in April next year, we should be at about 2,700 hammers in 6 years. Wow. So we do lots of hammers. And when I'm not making new 5160 or 4340 or 4140 hammers in dog heads or whatever standard geometric shape you want, I'm importing big groups of tools from Austria and the UK and slowly restoring those and getting those back into circulation here in the States.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And one thing I noticed about like being at your table and odd cross section, right? Because I'm getting back into forging after spending some time with a frozen shoulder or being out of it, right?
Right, not comfortable.
And I'm looking at, like, before, I don't think that some of my hammer equipment and whatnot was very useful to me.
Right.
And it was makeshift at best. But there was, like, I'm sitting here looking at some hammers, and, like, I don't know if I have, like, $300 or $400 to spend on trial, right? Trial and error.
Yeah, it's an expensive experiment.
Yeah. Well, but I look at, like, your hammers and your prices and things like that, and I have to say it's very reasonable for the quality of the hammer and everything with your price tag, right? Well, and to me, it seems like I could definitely see the appeal for people who are forging to have a product that's like high quality and also affordable offered to them. So I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense.
If you're a knife maker or a hobbyist knife maker, if you're paying the bills or just paying for your own hobby, or you're a general blacksmith and you love doing the church craft fairs, you love doing the rent fairs, you love doing the flea markets and stuff where you can go out there with 20 bottle openers, 50 steak turners and things of the nature, the horseshoe hearts and crosses and stuff. The more expensive your tools are, the more that cuts into how much money you're going to make, which means fewer supplies you're going to be able to do and the more stress put on you. You know, we are more than happy to make it up in bulk. We're more than happy to get a hammer in your hand for, $120 that you're going to make 30,000 on. We're more than happy to do that because you're going to come back and get another one. Now, if you go, there's so many really good hammer makers out here in the blacksmith, bladesmith community. I mean, yeah, Matt Marty, Jeff Bogdanoff, Mark Ling. I mean, and that's just three. I mean, there's some phenomenal monsters. I mean, Jim Poor. I mean, he does a whole line of production Ferris hammers that a lot of knife makers are using for knives, and they're all more expensive than mine, but they're all amazing quality. You know, if you never buy a hammer from me, but you show up with one of these other guys' hammers, I'm going to be just as excited for you because with proper care, that's only going to last you 300 or 400 years. Yeah. I mean, this is going to be an amazing tool in your kit. Now, if we can somehow fill a need in your kit to get a Two Bastards hammer in there, oh, my wife and I would love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And if you're thinking about something else, no problem. Or let's say you bought a great hammer, or maybe it's not even a great hammer, but it would be with the right handle on it. You bought a hammer because it was super budget, it was $20, it was at a flea market, but you hate the handle. Give it to me. We'll reface it. My wife will, do the handle upright for you. And now it's going to throw and swing and feel like one of our hammers, even though the head and peen's different, but we can make that work. Anything that keeps people swinging, heat beating, repeating, the more they're in this. We love the idea of, when if you have a big boat in a bay that has a deeper draw than some of the other boats, so you need more water in that bay. You're not just going to get water into your boat. So the more water comes into that bay, more fish come in for the fishermen. Everybody catches more. So I'm just as excited if somebody buys somebody else's hammer and then comes and shows me, hey, Frank, Nita, look what I got. I got this hammer from Jeff. I got this hammer from Mark Ling. I love it. These are great hammers. Or I got one of Jim Poor's Farrier's hammer because I like that kind of shorter, stubby design. It just feels better in my hand. Or his handles feel better. I'm going to be thrilled with it because you're going to be turning out amazing product.
Yeah.
So as long as there's produce being tools being created by all of us, then everybody benefits from this.
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing that's interesting to me in this whole dynamic of forging is the anvil price has gone through the roof.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I mean, we think a lot about back in the day, you'd buy an anvil, and even though you could talk about like the Cadillac and the Hay Budden or whatever, and the price point, it was still reasonable and obtainable for somebody to buy an anvil and then know that they could recoup their money.
Oh my gosh, if you were paying $2 a pound, it was almost too much.
Yeah.
Now you're lucky to get, a vintage Hay Budden or a vintage Peter Wright in really good condition. You're lucky to get it for $9 a pound.
Yeah.
But you have, again, that market's picked up because, again, once the market goes crazy, you'll have more people enter it at a more reasonable price. Mm-hmm. So you have the Atlas anvils now that are, I mean, they're making anvils specifically for bladesmiths. They are filling this community up. You have Texas Ferris Supply doing amazing anvils, and they'll work with you on the shipping. I mean, again, most of us suppliers want to get as much stuff into the market as possible. And bring more people into it, with especially with the knife making community, as with the blacksmithing community, you will see newcomers talking to veterans, guys who've been paying their bills and buying cars and putting kids in college with their knife making business for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And they are given every single secret they've ever had to some 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old newcomer who just bought his first forge, anvil and 3 or 4 hammers and a set of tongs. And they're given every secret because we all want to see this keep producing. We all want to see this keep growing. And a lot of people still think, outside of our community, still think blacksmithing or bladesmithing is a dying art. Mm-hmm. It's a dying, it's more of a hobby now. It's not a profession. And then they get in it and they realize, oh my goodness, there are people across the world doing this. I mean, I have conversations with Finn and Liam Christie from Ireland every few weeks. The guy is a master blacksmith. He's been doing this for decades. Torbjorn Amon, and I'm probably completely screwing up his name, but he's just a super great guy. The popular guys like Alex Steele, that everyone knows the name of, who started off blacksmithing when he was like 12. Mm-hmm. And then coming up through, does a lot of machining, a lot of restorations on old equipment, things like that, who bounces around between outside of London to, I think, Montana or Wyoming, wherever he was. Now I think he's back in England now. Yep. I'm just all over the place. But to see how much information is just pouring back into the community to make more blacksmiths, to help create more bladesmiths, because we got to keep it alive. And it's not in a panic, oh my God, what do we do if this dies? Because there is zero chance. I mean, we are being flooded. I've sold, 8 hammers this morning to guys that were just getting into it. I just sold them their first hammer. And that is awesome because that's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to go.
So I'm interested. You mentioned about being in the medical industry.
Yes.
What I've picked up from my little bit of research on your business and everything, and kind of talking to you and to others about you, you're very like entrepreneurially minded. Like you see a need and you fill a need, and you're very intense about understanding a problem that you're solving. Like where did that come from, and like how has working inside this industry nurtured that kind of concept for you insofar as it relates to knives?
Crazy question, great question. I have a million stories running through my head. So let's my parents, my father was they're both passed, but my father was a general vascular surgeon. My mom was his scrub nurse, 2 of the most hardest working people I've ever met. I'm the youngest with 4 siblings. There were 5 of us kids, all of us very driven, all of us business oriented, very business minded. None of us were just couch potatoes. I mean, always running, always busy. I grew up down on South Padre Island back when it was a small town. Mm-hmm. And my first job was actually where you're getting paid by hour and you have hours to show up and that kind of fun stuff, was being a deckhand on deep sea charter boats when I was 12. So you're running 12-hour days that start at 5 a.m., fueling up the boat, getting up bait, rigging lures, the whole bit, before you're taking a 36-foot Chris-craft out to the South Sponge Rock and pulling up as many kingfish, wahoo, and dorado as you can. But as far as independently, we used to have a paddle boat that would go up and down. Our house was on the bayside, and a paddle boat that would run north up the channel there, and it was a stern wheeler, not a center wheeler. So the stern wheeler paddle boat, and it would run up to the top of the channel, and it would make a U-turn to the left, and come back down. Well, about 3 out of 5 trips on this dinner cruise, it would get up to the end of the channel. I could watch it. It was about a quarter mile up the bay. It would turn when that south wind would just push this thing into the mud flats. Mm-hmm. Well, I had a little 14-foot aluminum skiff called the Tinker Toy, and I'd see it up there, and I went, I wasn't thinking it like you said, see a need, fill a need. So I went up there and told the captain, for $10 a person, I'll take all these people back to the dock because you're going to be here until they can pull you out. This was I believe a 75-foot stern wheel paddle boat. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay. So I'm putting 5, 6, 7, 8 people in this little 14-foot aluminum skiff. It's amazing we didn't capsize. And I'm taking them back to the dock, and I'm making 50, 60, 70 bucks a run, taking them back about a quarter mile the other side of the deal. I'm only running a half mile, making 70 bucks. Haul butt back to the paddle boat, and I'm doing this, and every time. And it got to be a thing where eventually I told my mom, I said, "Hey, Mom, can I borrow your boat?" She had a 24-foot center console that I could put 12 people on. That was a lot faster. And she said, "Yeah, just fill it up." And I was probably 14, 15 years old. And I go up there and he says, "I'm not paying you." I said, "Okay." And then all of a sudden the people were, "The hell you're not. Pay the kid. We want to go back. We got plans. We're not going to stay here for 2 hours." So I'd start doing that, and that's kind of where it began. And I bought more surfboards and bicycles and fireworks when I was a kid. So, I was great at making the money, but also I was real good at spending it. Getting into the medical field, it was I got into medical imaging right at about 21 years old. My goal was military, but I had 3 knee surgeries before I graduated high school. So, I mean, they wouldn't even let me carry water. So followed parents into the medical field, got into medical imaging, and just continued to do fun stuff in the medical field through from forensic radiography for the state of South Carolina to running special procedures, vascular interventional labs. And always had hobbies on the side. Always loved rusty tools. Always loved restoring old things. Whether it was after a hurricane at the beach and going down and salvaging some of the stuff off the boats that had capsized, and then restoring the stuff off those boats and getting them back, whether it was old compasses or the portals off shrimp boats, things of that nature. Yeah. So I just always loved old rusty stuff. And my love of the restoring the old stuff to restoring hammers that I would use, and then getting into blacksmithing and using almost exclusively restored hammers that I did. Learned how to restore them, learned how to rehandle them properly, or you learn how to do it wrong 10 times before you do it right. Yeah. And then that's kind of your secret and your trick, and you try to teach everybody how to do it that wants to learn, and getting into the business again was kind of a trick from my mentor, my blacksmith mentor, of, you just started a business, you just don't understand it. You don't know that you just started a hammer making business. So whether it's twisting wrenches or the anvil hold down tools, other suppliers, at some shows we may have 4 or 5 knives from different knife makers on our table who couldn't make the show. Whether it's other, bigger suppliers like Texas Supply, if they say, "Hey, you're going to show and we're not going, can we drop off a couple 100 pounds of tongs or belts or supplies or whatever?" We'd love it. We love that stuff. We love, if you can find 90% of what you're looking for by coming to us, we're thrilled. If not, I know who's got it, and I'm gonna hook you up. So whether it's imported anvils and fly presses and swage blocks to local belts and small wheel attachments for your reader grinder, I mean, whatever it is, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible journey. I'm always fascinated by people, and I can't. There's some people, I think, that look at a natural, I guess, God-given type of talent towards things and say that somebody lucked into something. And I hate that term when hard work is really the primary factor to...
It is hard work, but timing is everything. Yeah. And either you're going to seize that moment, you're going to seize that opportunity, or you're not. Yeah. I mean, my wife she's my partner in this business and in life. She's my best friend, and the biggest encouragement for this business. She sees what's happened over the last few years. She sees how fast we've grown. She sees where we were growing to. I mean, with the shows we're sponsoring, now we're involved with Quad State. Now we're involved with Oklahoma. We'll be in Arkansas next year. So we've shipped all over the world. But we've never done shows outside the state. And now we're going to be doing that. I mean, we're excited to keep going. And a lot of it is seeing the moment, but being scared of that unknown. I think every entrepreneur, everybody in business can maybe be a little intimidated by that certain opportunity. You know, is this something that I'm going to fall flat on my face on? Is this a good opportunity to grasp, or is it just an opportunity? And sometimes it's best to walk away. You know, there's stores we sell our hammers in, and there's stores we used to sell our hammers in, you know, because wrong market, maybe wrong management, whatever it was. It just, you know, we just found, again, this is business. This side of it's business. Just because you want to sell our hammers in your store, we may not be the person for you. There may be somebody else that would be a better hammer provider that might move better in your store than ours. You know, so you're right. I never liked that idea of, you know, lucked into a business or lucked into an opportunity. No, the opportunity's there. Now, what I like to do is set up those dominoes. Start making those relationships, making those friends, making those contacts, you know, network like a dog and set everything up. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, you know, you comment on somebody's post on Facebook or something, and next thing you know, they're trolling your page, and they're going back 3, 4, 5 years looking at stuff. And they're liking photos that you forgot you took.
Yeah.
You know, restorations you forgot you did, or, you know, gifts, whether you're, you know, restoring a portable forge and restoring a couple of hammers for some kid's 15th birthday because his dad knows he's a huge fan of blacksmithing. And I know what his dad does, and there's just no way he's going to be able to fund that. So, yeah, absolutely. I got stuff. We're going to make this happen. And the kid's going to do cool guy stuff. Dad's a hero. The kid's a hero. They're going to grow in this together. And all of a sudden now we got a whole new level of relationship between father and son there. So do you set up these dominoes and knock them down the way they need to be knocked down? Or is this just being in the right place at the right time? Sometimes it's both. Because you can be in the right place at the right time and absolutely walk away from a golden opportunity. So it's not always making the right decision, seizing the right opportunity. It's not making the wrong decision.
Yeah. I pause here mostly because I'm contemplating kind of like my cerebral kind of concepts or thoughts, and then also my emotional ones. Like you were probably, like, I just talking with you in the span that we have, I feel like you're probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Right. And
it's all show.
No, it absolutely is not. But the thing is, like, no, you're super intelligent. And you are able to be successful with your energy, right? But you're also that comes from the heart, right? And the energy and an investment that you put from your life energy comes from a place that I hope everybody sees that, because you're a lovable person. And you have an energy that to me is very profound. So it's hard sometimes to think, like, try to quantify that. But it means a lot to me that you want to talk, because I get to discover this side of, like, how does this thing happen, right? I mean, everybody I've talked to loves you, right? I see the.
I could give you a list of
people who
the
don't.
Others. Yeah.
Listen,
it's a much longer list.
I don't know. I mean, but the thing I think though, sometimes people in life have to be disruptive, and and the only way to shake shit up and to change things and to be positive is to have somebody who's helming that's willing to shake it up and willing to do what they feel is right. And, to me, it takes integrity. It takes the opportunity. And so to me, from what I feel that I know, you're that person. And it's interesting to me.
And I think every grown-up has a dark place inside somewhere, you know, and throughout life with the adventures and the stories I could tell, I have several areas where that dark side is kind of where I hung out. It was safe. That was the place I was most comfortable. And then, you know, you have a child, and that becomes the most amazing thing to your world, you know. You know, fast forward a few years, you meet the most amazing woman you've ever met in your entire life, you know. Nita, again, my wife, my partner. Mm-hmm. The cooler head when things need to prevail. She is the cooler head about it. And she is the one that taught me how to have fun again, how to really enjoy things again. Driven, yes, I was always very driven. Always had a hard edge on me, very, very hard edge on me. There was no smooth transition in my personality at all. It was either black or white. Mm-hmm. You know, I was either on or I was off. And she has really, really brought me back into, hey, sometimes the best thing is to just walk away. Mm-hmm. Or, no, this is a go-getter opportunity. This is a go-getter opportunity. I mean, as I was coming up here, because she is terrified of podcasts, so she was like, "Yeah, no luck. You know, you're going solo, pal." You know, and she kissed me and she said, "Go do what you do," which, and of course, my voice is gone from yelling over the bands yesterday and just having a blast with all these guys last night. It was just we have had so much fun, and we always do at these events. But so, you know, I apologize for the harshness, the raspy in my voice. But, you know, aside from that, she's the one that encourages me and says, no, this is good. This is good. This opportunity is a good opportunity. This you can do. She's the one that's brought me back in and said, no, it's okay to be super happy and super driven and super excited about this. So her as my, I don't want to say therapist, but gosh, she taught me how to do this self-therapy so much to keep me out of the dark places and keep me in the light and keep life fun. You know, again, she taught me again that it's okay to have fun as a grown-up. So she's the amazing person in my life, without a doubt. She's the one that brought me back. Gave me so much meaning. It's incredible. And between my son and her 3 sons, we have the greatest, tightest, funnest family ever that you only see on cheesy movies. You only see on cheesy television shows. It's like that family doesn't exist. Dude, I'm living in it. Yeah. You know, I'm living it. I got the greatest kids that love ribbing me, love doing stuff with us. And they're like, so how'd the show go? I mean, on the way back tonight, you know, probably about 7 o'clock, our phone's going to start blowing up and they're going to be asking, so how'd the show go? And these are grown men with their own wives and own kids. So they're excited, you know, they live vicariously through our adventures at these shows, through our conversations, through the people we met, through being on a podcast for the first time ever, you know. So and I have no idea where I was going with this, but again, if all you do is go to work and go home and turn on the television, you will be miserable. You will be miserable. I mean, it's just not, that's not a fun existence. It's just an existence. It's necessary. You got to do it. But why not have fun? You know? And I saw a sticker on one of the guy's fridges in his forge, and it said, "We do not do this because it's easy. We do this because we thought it would be easy." You know, and that's the fact. I mean, there is nothing fun about doing a 12-hour shift at the hospital, and then you walk in, instantly fire up the forge, turn on the forge press, and you know it's 110 degrees outside, and you look up at the thermometer and you're like, okay, it's 128 degrees in here, and I've been in here for 3.5 hours. I need to step out into the 100-degree 10 heat outside, 110-degree heat outside, and cool off. There's nothing fun about that, but there's tons of rewards. You get to see what you've done at the end. You get to see other people using it. We always keep a handful of resto hammers, restoration hammers, small things, 1.5 to 3 pounds. And we'll keep some under the table. And when, little Susie or little Jimmy come by and their eyes are like pie plates and they're 10, 12, 13 years old, and they're looking at the hammers, and they're looking at the anvils, and they're looking at all of the knives from these amazing knife makers out here, and they're looking at this stuff going, this is why I want to do this. This is why I want to do this, to their parents.
Yeah, that's cool.
And mom and dad are like, okay, you're going to be $3,000 deep in this before you ever strike fire. And I'm like, no. There's a chunk of train rail. There's a 10-inch chunk of train rail. Susie, can you pick that up? She says, oh, yeah. Picks it up. You pull a hammer out from under the counter. Okay, mom and dad, they already have something to hit hard with. Already something hard to hit on. All you need to do is buy them something that makes fire. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
At this point, it's all about fire.
Yeah.
And they can play with railroad spikes and rebar for the next year.
Yeah.
And make hearts for Valentine's Day. Make crosses. Make bottle openers. Make steak turners. They can do all this kind of fun stuff. And you're into it for the price of a forge. But now in this case, you also owe me a debt to little Susie or Jimmy.
Yeah.
You owe me a debt. Within a year, you need to send me a picture of something you've made. Something you've made with this hammer and anvil and forge.
Yeah.
Whether it's a steak turner, it's a cross, it's a really bad S-hook, something. And it was funny, about a month ago, got a package in the mail, and it's a return address, no name, but it's a post office box somewhere from Wyoming. And it was a tube, and opened it up, and it's a gorgeous railroad spike steak turner.
Oh, yeah.
Gorgeous. I had no idea who sent this to me. No clue who sent it. But it was like, no, this wasn't the deal. I just wanted the picture. But oh my God, I've used that steak turner like 10 times in the last month. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I know that you have to get to this demo that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, we're going to restore a hammer. I got a guy out here begging for it. I love the restorations, taking something that's been completely abused and then giving it a home again. We're going to reface it, repaint it, just give it the whole sexify it, and handle it, sand it, burn it, sand it again, BLO, and walk off with a new hammer.
Yeah, well, let's get to it. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's a pleasure being on here.
We need to talk more.
Absolutely, anytime.
There's lots of stuff that we're vibing on, and I really want to expound on that. But I feel that way all the time. I love talking. My gift is the gift of gab, and that's about it. But
understood.
But I really appreciate you spending the time with me talking. It's been
pleasure's completely mine.
Yeah, thank you.
Machinist turned ABS journeyman smith and full-time bladesmith, Jeff Davidson, spent his formative years collecting knives and learning the craft through hard work. Through an apprenticeship with knife-making icon Ed Fowler, Jeff has taken advantage of his acquired knowledge and applied it in manipulating metal to produce some exciting pieces of functional art. In addition to this, he spends a great amount of time teaching knife-making classes and advocating for the craft with his country charm and thoughtful expression. Jeff, it's great to talk to you.
Good to be here.
So, what was your decision to go full-time? I don't know what you had done previously per se, but I'm interested to know kind of like what the leap of faith requirements are for that level of commitment. I respect the hell out of people who want to go full-time in knives and everything.
Well, I'd say leap of faith is a good way to describe it for anybody that has taken that move. Long story short, I come from a machining background, manufacturing background, and I've made knives for 21 years, full-time for the last 3. Basically, I wanted to be able to be home more. I wanted to be able to be more involved with people I care about and chase my dreams. So I was working for General Electric. That was a great job, great benefits, but all the corporate stuff, the typical corporate stuff, the politics, all those kind of things played into that big time. And I mean, I'd always dreamed of doing my own thing, and so all that kind of came to a head in COVID, kind of in the height of COVID, and yeah, we went for it.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, I can't say that I've ever had the, I don't know, strength is the wrong word, because I've been an entrepreneur in a lot of different ways before. Had my own businesses, but when it comes to knives, I know that I love it, and it's really fascinating to me, but I just don't know that I could make a living at it and then feel like, you know, the consequences of that would be not keep me up at night. And so, like, when I think about somebody who's been willing to take that chance, for me, it's like a lot of respect. Like, what I want for you is to always just be successful, and that's what I see with anybody in knives who goes full time. Is like that's what I want. So, you know, for anybody who listens out here, you know, it is an incredible honor of ours to support full-time knife makers, because like it is direct to table.
And we appreciate that, no matter where that support comes from. I mean, and I mean, anybody listening to this, guys, whether you're sharing posts or buying raffle tickets or buying knives or taking classes or even just telling your friends, hey, I know this guy that makes cool stuff. It doesn't matter what you make. Supporting makers, like, we literally live and die by word of mouth, and we appreciate all that support. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's tough. But I mean, the Lord provides, and like I say, when you say it's a leap of faith, it truly is, because you never know when you're going to get a payday. So I mean, for those thinking about it, I mean, think about it, pray about it, don't take it lightly. I mean, save up, build quite a nest egg in your savings, build quite a stockpile of supplies that you're going to need. You better make sure that your shop is in order, and all the equipment that you think you need to be efficient. I mean, if you got a steady job, tool up, gear up, save up, and then pull the trigger when you think the time is right. But yeah, it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but I'd do it again for a second. I mean, they wouldn't call it chasing dreams if you didn't have to actually chase it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's with so many things, in entrepreneurship, they like people think that like knives is like the easy thing, right? And I don't know what it is about turning hobbies into businesses, but oftentimes if you're doing like growing a business or have any idea of taking it to another level, you got to put like considerable amount more effort into taking that risk of making it a full-time thing. Like, there's a safety net in part-time or hobby craft, but full-time, it just, you know, it really makes a big difference in the level of spontaneity and adaptation to your environment, in order to make sure that the next move that you make is the one that makes you succeed and not the one that makes you fail.
Right. And that fear is totally real. That I mean, strategic planning and decision making. I mean, most businesses are a few wrong moves away from going under. So especially in the early years, like, I'm thankful I've got a really good support group around me of people, I mean, friends and family and customers that are really into what I do, and they tell everybody around them. And shout out to my buddy Chris Coulter, that literally random strangers is like, hey, look at my knife, and my buddy Jeff makes them. And I mean, those kind of people literally or make you or break you, having them or not. And you have to reward those people. You have to thank those people and cherish them in your life, because that's hard to find. And I used to have this when I first got started. I didn't know anybody in the knife world. I didn't have followers. I didn't have a big customer base. And I used to think, like, I see these big time guys, they have like their people, quote unquote, their air quotations, their people. And I was like, well, maybe someday I'll have people. And like one day I woke up and I realized I do. It just, you don't get to pick who those people are, but when they show up, you better appreciate them. All right. So, yeah, it's just, we makers, we pour our hearts into this stuff. You work a crazy amount of hours. But when somebody sees a piece of the vision you had in your mind and in your heart to create this thing that's an expression of yourself, I mean, I have a shirt and a sticker that says this is my definition of art, and that's many fold for me. But I mean that. I truly mean it. It's expression from inside of me. And when somebody sees that little piece of you and they get it, there's a connection there that you can't really quantify or explain. Um, that yes, it's great to make a sale, but when they truly see it for what it is and they understand it and they appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, you cannot put a price tag on that. That is one of the most fulfilling things I've found in life.
Yeah. Well, the movie Avatar, the Na'vi tribes or whatever, like one of the things that that it's poignant in the movie is that they like, I see you, right? And I think that there is something beyond the purchase, right? When somebody invests in you, they are really investing in you. And when you get that acknowledgement and it's something that you share, people like genuinely, you as the maker, you as the person behind that, is who, like what motivates them. That's a really great and symbiotic relationship. So, man, I really appreciate what you do. I know that you got to get back to selling knives. It's busy out there. And, hopefully we can schedule some time when it's not so busy to have a full podcast where we can talk about all the myriad of questions that I have for you that we couldn't cover here. But, it's a pleasure for sure.
Right on, right on. Glad to be here. Look forward to doing something in the future. Guys, please support your local makers, and thank you to Aaron for having me on here, and can't wait to see what the future holds. Y'all check me out, Jeff Davidson Custom Knives on Instagram or jeffdavidsonCustomKnives.com. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
A bladesmith for the last 10 years, Eland Green has a jovial disposition that makes you want to be his friend. His passion for bladesmithing and his beautiful work is probably one of the many reasons he's been a repeat guest on 3 seasons of Last Blade Standing and the 9th season of Forged in Fire. He and his wife operate Lost Wood Knives, Eland making the knives, and Brooke providing the leathercraft. But what's more, they both share a love of knife making that is inviting and infectious for others. I got to speak with Eland a little bit about himself while Brooke tended their table at the show. Eland, it's great to talk to you.
It's nice to be here with you, Aaron.
Yeah, it's like take 2. First time around, I didn't have the microphones on. It seemed kind of stupid. This is my job. So, I'm interested. What got you into knives?
So this is gonna be funny because it's like every little boy, I loved swords, knives, action movies with the swords, the medieval movies. So I always wanted to make my own sword. And it evolved from that into what it is today of making knives. I've made 2 swords now. But it turned from that and always needing a knife when I was growing up to, well, I can make that. I don't want to spend money on buying one when I can make it. And then I found out it's more expensive to make it than it is to buy it. So.
Yep, it's the same old. Yeah, so my understanding is that you've gone full-time more recently, but what were you doing before, to make a living before you went full-time?
So I don't want to say I job hopped, but I spent about an average of 3 years at different jobs. I worked a machine shop, and that helped me with some of my knife growth, honestly, because I had guys like, oh, well, you can use this tool for this, or you can use this tool for that. And so that helped me grow there. And then I went into powder coating, which didn't really help my knife career, but it paid the bills, allowed me to do this on the side. I did that for about 6 years, and then got to the point where I couldn't focus there because so much stuff going on in the shop and my brain was there instead of my job. So it just turned into, well, instead of waiting until you turn 30, which was the goal age to go full time, my wife's like, no, you're done. Go give them your 2 weeks. You're done. You're coming home and working from home. So, okay.
That's great. Well, I mean, you say your mind was there, but really, if you think about it, your heart was, right?
Everything.
And that's I think that's something that's interesting is, um, when you job hop, as it were, you're really just trying to find the thing that speaks to your soul, right?
Exactly.
And if you had that thing that you're nurturing and putting it off because of like the financial instability of making knives and stuff, I could see that. But I mean, how's it going for you? Do you regret it at all, or is it,
It's a struggle finance wise because, not everybody's out to buy a custom knife. Not everybody is out to buy a $2,000 high end knife. But I've been told a lot, do what you love and the money will come. And we have been able to be okay without any major issues. I have an awesome group of customers who have bought multiple knives. They love to come back. They share it with their friends and family. They'll buy their friends and family knives as gifts. And then we have shows like this, the Lost Spine show, and I think 3 or 4 lined up just throughout the year that are a big help too, because people come out and they know what they're looking for. They know they're coming with the mindset of, oh, there are custom knives here. I'm probably going to buy one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's cool. And also, you fit really well into this, like, the narrative of the Texas knife show and culture around knives that, I'm really seeing emerging, where, it's not just like you and Huse and other people like that are kind of like the, rising in popularity, but it's like what I'm interested in with this Texas culture of knife making is really just the investment in knives for the sake of what, I don't know what it is, a secret sauce, like loving customers, loving the craft. Everybody I talk to in Texas especially is just really like, we have a lot of similarities in the way that we think about the craft. And I think that's what, if the rest of the country is looking at what the rising tide in Texas, it's you and others they're kind of like promoting that and trying to be available and support it.
yeah, like, so for the Texas Knifemakers Guild, our vice president, Terry, was saying that we are one of the largest growing groups. And I think part of that is because, like you said, we all have a passion for what we're doing. We all have kind of a similar mindset, but nobody's afraid to share knowledge. Nobody's afraid to direct a customer to somebody who might be more specified for what they're wanting made. And it's a great group of guys. And well, I can't say just guys because we have several lady makers. It's just a great group of people that are willing to share their knowledge, willing to share anything just to help another person grow in the craft, because we don't want to see it die out. We want to see it expand to where there's a maker for just about every person that wants a knife.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And another thing I think about too is back in the day, you had like some knife makers that were doing a pretty good job in Texas, and a lot of knife shaped objects. And I've been really impressed with the bar raising around just good knives from makers and whatnot. And it's interesting too. I think probably because it seems like a lot of people are embracing forge work inside of Texas, and I'm interested to know if it'll be like the epicenter of forged blades, because it seems like there's an awful lot of makers that really want to focus on forged work versus stock removal like me.
Yeah, there are a ton of forge workers, but it's kind of hard in Texas too because we got the summer heat. But it's not so much a focus on forging. I don't feel like, I could be 100% wrong on this, but it's the matter of we're moving the metal with the heat and our hammers, and we're able to shape it to what we want. Just, and for me, it's sometimes letting out aggression. Like, I need that space of, okay, I'm aggravated or I'm having a bad day. I can go out there and hit steel with a hammer and let it all out. And I know there's a lot of guys that are the same way. They get in their headspace of forging, and it's just a whole nother world. So I don't know about it being the epicenter of it, but there are a lot of us out there. And again, it's a lot of shared knowledge on that, because there are a lot of awesome, awesome bladesmiths out here that share their forging knowledge. And there's a lot of places that don't share it. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. One, the proximity to some knife makers in a lot of other states is, like pretty far. But here you can throw a stone and almost hit one. And I appreciate that, because it seems like everywhere that I'm around, like coming down here, I could think of like five to 10 really solid knife makers who do forged work that I could come and talk to. And, when I'm down here, right? And when I'm up back in the, DFW area, it's the same way. There's just incredible makers and distributed very well to be able to learn from. So I'm not encouraging people to move to Texas, but it is a really great place to be able to hone that craft.
yes, it is. And there are a lot of awesome people. Like you said, you pretty much can throw a stone and hit 3 knife makers.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who offer classes for the forging that, I mean, I've been forging for several years, and I went and took a class and I still learned stuff. And just having that wealth of knowledge right down the road is awesome. Because like you said, not a lot of states have that. Some of them have, you got to drive 4 or 5 hours to find another knife maker. Whereas I can drive, I think, an hour and a half down the road and I'm at Jeff Davidson's place.
Yeah.
And it's, he's invited me out multiple times. Come forge with me. Come forge with me. I got to make the time, but
Yeah.
it's awesome, because a lot of people are like, "Hey, come out to my shop. We'll forge together. We'll have a good time," And it's awesome. Having that community within Texas just makes it all that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. So, you're forging everything, and I think your focus was more towards going full time at the point where you got on Forged and Fire, right? Or had you already gone full time? I can't remember the timeline.
It was, if my old bosses ever listen to this, they're gonna laugh. I think about a month after my episode aired, my wife she texted me. She said, "Hey, you're done. Give them your 2 weeks." Like, are you sure? Like, how's that gonna affect us financially? I don't care. You're doing it. Like, I'm tired of seeing you suffer doing something you don't enjoy when you were so busy here and you enjoy it. You have a passion, a fire for it. So we'd been talking about it for a while, and the age went from, okay, at 35, I'm quitting whatever job I'm at and I'm going full time. Then it went to 30, and then it went to 28. And then before I even turned 28, that's when we called it done, and been going ever since.
Yeah. And so what was the Forged and Fire experience like in all of that?
I am not used to having people yelling at me in my own shop. So I had a blast. I met a great group of guys. I still talk to one of them, Clay, almost every day. We've done a collaboration. We've done a show together, and it's an awesome experience. And I would tell anybody who wants to do it. Even if you fail, it's still a fun experience. You got to be like, oh, I'm on TV, And so I had a struggle point because we had to do San Mai on ours out of these giant coil springs. And they pulled us away to do interviews. And when they do that, they tell you to set your stuff on the anvil so it doesn't overcook in the forge. And that messed with me, because when they pulled me over for my interview, I started getting frustrated because I was watching my work cool down and that timer count down.
Yeah.
And I was just to the point, I'm like, stop asking me questions. Let me go back to work. But they need it for the show. They need the conversation and stuff like that. So, but it was a fun experience. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. I, like, biasly, I don't know if I could tolerate that, because I've always felt like a knife takes as long as it takes.
Yes.
Right. And so because of that, there are certain things that I'm just like, I do not sacrifice quickening things for the sake of it. And Forged and Fire is not like that. Like the entire methodology is to do stuff quick.
Yep.
It's like it's a timeline that builds drama and chaos into it naturally.
Yep. They got to have that entertainment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it is like Alex Steele had I guess maybe he had been asked at some point in time if he wanted to be on, and he was like, I don't think that's my direction. But then he started, like, he did some stuff where it's like, can I forge this in a few hours, like under constraints that are similar to Forged and Fire? And he's like, turned out not great.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, like the people who know how to manage heat and manage their operations to be able to not only do in those constraints, but to also turn out a really, good looking knife. It's not a knife shaped object. It is a full knife, functional, everything. It's crazy to me.
And see, I've heard people say that that's luck. No, that's skill. It's time management. They know what they're doing and they're adaptable. Because it took me a little bit of time to get used to having to work around things, having to turn off my equipment. Because when I'm in my shop, if I know I'm going to be running right back to the press in about 2 seconds, I'll leave it on. You can't do that there. They scream at you, shut it off, because the camera people, and they don't want anybody getting hurt. I understand it. So it takes, you got to be adaptable and you got to be able to move on your feet and get to the mind space where you're like, okay, I got to get this done, this done, this done, this done. And I have this much time to do it. And I have to be here, 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 and here. But you're also working around another person because you're sharing a grinder space, a welder, and your press with one person. And then you're sharing the power hammer with all 4 people.
Yeah.
So it's you have to be adaptable and you have to have that mindset of time management. I didn't do too great at that, but
well, yeah, I don't. That seems crazy to me. Yeah, but I don't think it's luck. I mean, if I think it's really. I mean, I'm speaking like completely biasly here, but I've known forgers who they're like blacksmiths. Like I've been at Texas Fair Supply when they've done some demos, and I've seen some blacksmiths that the way that they think about forging is so foreign to me because they do certain operations at certain times, like draw something out or swedge something or something like that. And I'm like, why did you do it here? And then they like fold everything together or whatever. And it's like this rose or whatever. I'm like, magic. Like you lied.
Dude, that blows my mind. Watching people be able to unfold patterns of Damascus in their head to recreate it.
I know.
I can't do that. Like somebody will be like, oh yeah, you just do this, this, and this. I'm just over here. How did you get to that point? Because I have to watch it go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. I have to watch it get to the end. I can't go backwards and unfold it. That just people who can do that are on a whole other level.
Yeah, well, and I think that everybody who really like tries can get there, but there are definitely some people who have natural, like God-given gifts to be able to figure out that stuff, and I am not one of them. Yeah. I can sit and talk. I have the gift of gab, but when it comes to doing stuff like that, I just sit and marvel. And I look at your work too, and you've come a long way even since you got on my radar. And that the knife you just did, is it a Bowie with that mammoth?
That big old feather Damascus Bowie with the mammoth tusk.
Yeah, if I had the money right now, I'd buy it off you. It's a beautiful knife.
I appreciate that. Yeah. What's crazy is there were so many firsts in that one. Mm-hmm. So first feather, first frame tang, first mammoth tusk, and it just blows my mind that I was able to make that.
Yeah.
And so my focus, even from the beginning, has always been the everyday Joe being able to come up to me and say, hey, I need a knife that I'm okay if something happens to it. I'm not out $1,000, for a knife that I'm going to be using in the field. I'm going to be using it to gut and skin animals. I'm going to be using it to do all this stuff. And, well, there's $1,000 gone if I lost it in the field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is not the norm for me, that $2,000 Bowie. But it's something I want to try and do more of, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just every once in a while, just to test my limits as a maker.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have a desire sometimes to do the, I wouldn't call it the art knife, but there's art in it. I don't think of like certain projects as being art. But I do think of things as being my ability to play and to imagine things versus just doing kind of the regular rigmarole.
Yeah.
It's to just kind of discover And that's why I kind of see like those elements that you pulled together in that blade. They oddly work together very well in a way that to me is very attractive. And so I think you pulled it off wonderfully. And I don't even know if that was the intention, but whatever concept you came up with and executing it in the final product, I think it's a lovely thing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It was like you said, it's being able to come up with that idea in your head and play with it. Because as full time, you don't get as much free time to play with these things. So I consider them my little pet projects.
Yeah.
Because I make the everyday Joe stuff, and then I have that one or two projects that I'm like, man, that's drawing all my attention right now, and I really want to work on it, but I need to get these done so I can pay bills. So then I can play on these. And that buoy was, to date, just the most wild thing I've done. And like you said, it came together better in reality than it was in my head. Like with every knife that you make, there's going to be one or two things that you're looking at it like, I could have done better on that. But that's how we grow. We play with those, pet projects, those side projects, and on the next one we can be like, oh, we're going to do this differently. So that's one of the nice things about those.
Yeah, listen. Well, more power to you. I mean, I most of the time when I get in the shop, it's with having time from my full-time gig and things like that I do after that. And most of what I do in the shop is not, I mean, it's all playing around at some point because if I'm not a full-timer, but between the podcast and between doing stuff in the shop, I need to spend more time dedicated to that portion of things, like being creative instead of just like trying to make stuff for shows to sell and whatnot. It's a weird psychology, knives, because you want to make stuff that sells. You try to get in your customer's head. You try to do stuff that expresses yourself. You get stressed out if something doesn't sell. It's like all these emotions that just like, it's like hyperspeed emotions. Like you're just living on the edge of yourself and what you can tolerate. Sometimes it gets to be a lot.
Oh yeah, it can be overwhelming. I'm gonna be so serious right now. There are times I'll be out in the shop trying to do multiple things, and my brain just fries, and I sit down, and I can't do anything because there's so much to do. I'm just like down.
Yeah. I've never been like diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, but there are elements of it that I notice in my daily life. And knives is hard sometimes because if I get overwhelmed with something, I just get scatterbrained.
Yes.
And then for me, I'm like, well, I've lost my usefulness here. I just can't do anything else because it'll take me a little while just to kind of like, I don't know, whatever this wobbly planet in my head, that's my brain, just has to start evening itself out before I can go
I'm
again.
so right there with you. It's crazy, but this is personal opinion, but I almost don't think there's a knife maker out here that doesn't have some ADHD or something, because if you watch anybody in their shop or as they're just talking, they'll go from this all the way over to a different conversation about something else, and then right back to that, and then all to a different conversation, and then it's just, we're all moving so fast in our own heads, and we'll get to talking business or we'll get to talking creativity, and we're all just gone.
Yeah.
Just 100 miles a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's also, we're talking about things that we're very passionate
Yes,
about,
that
right?
too.
And passion drives chaos, I guess. I don't know what it is. It's whatever this thing is that we're doing together. It seems like there are certain people that just drives real well with, and
Oh yeah.
I don't. But yeah, I mean, so what's in the foreseeable future? What do you got going on? Is there anything interesting that's on your plate?
So I am playing with the 3D canister Damascus, 3D printed forms.
Interesting.
I made my first one. It came out successful, and I got overzealous with my smashing on the press because I was just so excited that it worked, and I just cracked it all to crap.
Oh man.
So my second one, I took my time, and it came out, and it looks awesome. It's a little distorted because I've never done anything like that, but I plan for either Blade Show, Texas, or Belleville next year to have a mosaic of the 3D printed canister.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about the coolest thing I'm working on right now.
Yeah. I don't know why things like that excite me so much, but Steve Schwarzer was talking to me about 3D printing and whatnot. I saw some of the hubbub when it was published and everything. And I love the fact that in our craft now, we are realizing that the modern technology we use still has applications in knife making, because something I was talking about with Steve is there are people that were in like aerospace and everything like that were using wire EDM and things that were available at the time to advance us to a place where we are now.
Yeah.
And taking 3D printing makes it way easier. Like I remember when 3D printing came out, and I was like, it'd be super cool because, you need a tool on an international space station, and somebody designs the STL or whatever, and you should like send it up there and they can print it out, and they need stuff. Whereas there's no way to do that in space exploration or in like long distance things. You can't manufacture certain things.
Right.
But you have the ability to do certain things with 3D printing and some of the tools available at the time, like integrating some metal parts with stuff and kind of designing around it. Because really, it's an engineer's playground at that point. You can put things that are completely different materials and things like that, and pop them in a 3D printed scaffold, and make a tool that you just would never even think about before. And like being able to I'm all about in knives where the barrier of entry is lower, because like if you're a wire EDM, you'd either have to send it off or you'd have to have one yourself, and like $60,000 to $100,000 plus, and it's unobtainium. But here you have a 3D printer and you spend a little bit of time on the knowledge and you can kind of figure those things out. I mean, it takes a lot, but it's not so expensive that you just could never do it,
Right. And then once you expand your knowledge on that, like if you know CAD programming and stuff, the things you can do, not just, for knife making, but 3D printing in general is really cool. But when I got my 3D printer, I had no thoughts whatsoever for knife making. I thought of it for nerd stuff. I was going to make card deck boxes and stuff. And then they posted, like you said, Steve and Kilroy's Workshop posted the canister molds. And I turned to my wife, I was like, that's the coolest freaking thing I've ever seen. I'm going to start playing with that. And it does take a little learning, but once you get to it and you can learn your CAD programming, you can make all kinds of designs that will work for the canister. You can make different inserts just for your handles and stuff. You can make ways to cast. I know there are people who are using it for like the lost wax casting for guards and stuff like that. You can make guard templates, handle templates, template knives. It's wild. Once you have that open door, it's just like anything else with knife making. You branch off into this whole other area, and just a whole new world of what you're capable of doing opens up to you.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. Well, when you get it all nailed down, I would love to come up to your shop and do some mosaic and stuff and learn the process, because
Heck yeah.
I getting into like forging again, I have like no equipment anymore. So, and I like, as much as I appreciate heating and beating stuff, I would much rather be able to do Damascus on a press or something like that. It's kind of interesting how all that works out. So I'll make sure that you're compensated, because I know that stuff costs money. But
hey, just give me a heads up so I can clean my shop. It looks like a tornado went through it.
Dude, mine too. I appreciate these knife makers who keep their shops really clean. Unfortunately, I am not one of them.
Same.
But well, it's real cool to have you on the show, dude. We'll have to do this again in a larger scale and talk more about kind of some of the same concepts, but I also kind of want to dig into some other things that I've been thinking about.
Heck yeah.
So when we can get together and talk and do a full episode, I would love to have you on it too.
Dude, you just hit me up. I'm down anytime. This was a blast.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for being on the show.
Jack Thatcher is a quintessential character in the Texas bladesmithing and knife-making scene. With over 30 years' experience as a hunting and fishing guide, his knives are both utility and art. He's an ABS journeyman smith and received professional training from internationally acclaimed mastersmith J.W. Randall. Whether Jack talks with you or at you, he boasts the bravado, knowledge, and experience that gives confidence he knows what he's talking about, backed by a truly sincere heart that also lets you know how much he cares. Jack, it's great to talk with you.
It's good to be here, man.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
So,
I'm interested, like with every person, there's a story behind what got them into knives, and I want to briefly cover that with you because I think it's from what I've heard so far, it's interesting. Can you cover kind of like what this transition into like knife making and your particular style of knife making, and like how that started?
Yeah, I have. I'm one of those lucky individuals who's been able to make his living in some form of the outdoor industry, one way or another, my entire life. I did the corporate thing, I wore a tie and a suit, and it just wasn't for me. I did a lot of outside sales and marketing and stuff, and I said, you know what, I'm just not enjoying myself. This is I need to own my own businesses, and so back in the day, I was lucky enough. I started an archery shop. I've owned different kind of businesses. I've owned archery shops. I've actually been a fishing guide. I was a fishing guide for 14 years,
Wow.
taking people out bow fishing for giant alligator gar. And so it's on top of all of that, I've been a bow hunter for like 36 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And I bow hunt exclusively. It's taken me all over North America. I've not traveled anywhere else really. But I've been all the way from the Arctic Circle all the way down into Mexico, and so, I've chased a lot of big game with my bow. And with all the bow hunting and all that, you got to have some knowledge of cleaning game. I eat everything. My family, we eat everything that we harvest. And so, um, I got tired of having to carry 2 and 3 knives into the field, especially like on an elk hunt where you're packing way back in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And so, that's a lot of extra weight. And some of those knives, and we're talking about store-bought brands, okay? Over the counter, store-bought,
Mhm.
I'm not going to mention any brand specifics, but you know how that goes. Once they stop cutting, you're done. And you can't get them sharp in the field. So my journey at that point, I realized, you know what, there's got to be something better than this. I've got to learn, and maybe there's a custom knife. So I remember buying, like in 2002, I remember buying a really nice custom blade, and and it performed fairly well. It was handmade for me, and I thought, I can do this. I can build this. I can build something. I would always go with my hands, and I started with prototypes at first. I started forging before I ever knew anything about stock removal. My journey, I learned how to forge. I learned how to manipulate the steel, how to heat treat the steel. Um, I attended, and I realized there's other levels. There's several levels, and I
Yeah.
said, okay, I've got to learn more. So I started attending Johnny Stout's hammer ends, and
Yeah.
I think I did that for like 10 years. Got to meet a lot of people in the industry. Made friends with all these guys. Started taking classes with J.W. Randall, which really was an eye opener. And he's a great bladesmith. And so that my journey's taken me through the American Bladesmith, the Texas Knifemakers Guild. I'm actually a journeyman smith with the ABS,
Mhm.
and it's been a really cool journey, man. I've enjoyed putting my knives to work, testing them. I've got border patrol guys using my stuff. I've got hunting guides on the King Ranch using my stuff, and the feedback that I get back. In fact, before I forget, I've got Justin Dixon, which is a fantastic tracking dog guy.
Mhm.
He's using my stuff, my knives, and he tells me, he says, "Man, this is the most amazing cutting knife I've ever seen in my life." You get all this feedback from these guys in the field, actually day to day using. It starts to build your confidence,
Yeah.
and so I started to do shows, and people started to like my work, and it's taken off from there. When all of us start out, we get support from our friends,
Yeah.
and our family, like, hey, yeah, I'll buy one, but it's not to make money. It's just to keep you going and
Yeah. Yeah.
start to grow your inventory, maybe start to grow, materials and equipment, So anyway, that's kind of what it's been, man. I mean, it's bow hunting has driven just about every aspect of my adult life, pretty much.
Yeah. That's I've always been better with a boomstick than I have been with archery. I'm not exactly sure why. I've never really been particularly great at handguns either. But I, I noticed that there's this common thread in knives where it really is like see a need, fill a need, right?
Sure.
And a similar kind of like experience with me is like I went hunting. I got TBWD draw hunt, and got selected for Laguna Atascosa for nilgai. And we took just like generic stuff down there, and we're hunting some like half cows basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And we got two out of there, a bull and a calf, or a bull and a cow.
Yeah.
And they were a little bit to get through with that like those knives that we brought. And basically, there were three of us there, and I was sharpening the knives pretty much, and they were going through them. I think there were it was like really crappy heat treated 440C.
Yeah.
Like it's just like whatever the knives are that you can buy in the store, like brand name excluded from this.
Sure.
But that's the thing. It was just painful, and I was like, never again. And so I was like, I was in a similar boat where I was like, I can do this. And I was like, before I go on another big game hunt again, I want something of quality. Maybe I should have stopped there, just bought custom. But there was something in me that said I really want to discover this and do it for myself.
Yeah.
And I think further to that progression and thought or whatever is that if a chef could make a knife all the time, right, have the duality of experience and everything, then a chef would probably make a really great knife. And I think a phenomenal hunter makes a phenomenal hunting knife, right?
Sure.
And that's where I think that when people really pursue not only their interests but zero in on that expertise, that it really produces something in an industry where it's just not that much of, like everybody who I've seen who's done hunting knives really well has also been a successful hunter, not just a hunter, but a successful one.
Yeah. And
I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, well, one of the things I'll touch base on is that when you're making a good hunting knife, you also got to take into account how it's going to be used,
Mm-hmm.
the guy's hand shape, how, you got some guys with giant bare hands, and you can't hand them a little 7-inch knife and say, hey, get after it, because it's not going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And what you get with a custom knife, you get somebody that can say, okay, yeah, you've got bare paws. This is what we need to fit you into. We'll build you one of these and go out and use it. Try to tear it up, and have fun. We feel that need as custom knife makers. We can really narrow down for somebody that, and fill a need, like you said, specific things like, the angle of the edge and how they're going to, hey, am I going to baton through stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even get me started on bushcraft. That's not my thing. I couldn't tell you a whole lot about it, but nilgai, yeah, I've taken 3 of those with a bow. I can assure you, I can tell you about nilgai. Those things have thick hides, and man, you will destroy some knives real quick on nilgai if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But man, fantastic table fare, am I right?
Yeah, the best.
Yeah, it was really good eating stuff, man.
Yeah, I've dreamt about getting another nilgai, but they're like expensive to buy into, and it's hard to draw for. So I don't know any South Texas boys or anybody who wants to get like de-litter their property with nilgai. So.
Oh yeah. The Texas ranchers will say, "Oh my God, we're overrun with hogs. We need help from the state."
Like
blah blah. Blah. Yeah, but they'll charge you $500 to come out or $1,000 to come out and do it.
Yeah.
And so Crimea River, man.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when I first started bow hunting, and this is, man, I want to say, maybe late '80s, early '90s, we could actually get groups of guys together, and we'd go to big ranches, and they'd cut us loose. We could fill pickups with hogs. I mean, there was just so many places to kill pigs, and they wanted them gone.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't feel sorry for these guys at all. You made your bed. You want to profit every day up from it. Hey, good luck.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've gotten groups together, at least 30 people sometimes, to go on big hunts and kind of, management type hunts where we're trying to get, numbers
Mm-hmm.
down, and you can't hardly do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. In fact, I just gave up. I stopped doing it. I'm like, and they don't appreciate it anymore either. So, but yeah, man, it's a passion. It becomes a passion. The knife making, you start to, the knife shows have been a blast. You get to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. if I can't make something for somebody, I refer them to a guy that I know can,
Yeah, absolutely.
and gosh, I guess this community is just fantastic. I mean, I mean, literally have yet to meet somebody that I just can't get along with in this game. I am working towards making the Texas Knifemakers Guild a stronger community. We're trying to help the guys that are in this game already. And sometimes I give advice when it's not asked for. And, and like just now when you were, when we met outside, I was giving that man advice because he was sitting there with his arms crossed and just, in a bad. And I said, "Hey man, look, you're not gonna get people to stop and talk to you if you have, a kind of a bad attitude. You gotta talk to people, get up, enjoy yourself, either that or get with a group of guys, where you're comfortable and you can start to, participate and just because he's a fantastic knife maker, but he's just timid.
Yeah.
And you can't be timid in this game, you got to be comfortable talking to people.
Yeah.
And man, and your sales will take off. Because I mean, I'm telling you, great looking knives that guy has. He just sit there quiet and never got up,
Yeah.
And I don't know if he sold anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've experimented with that over the years because I'm not I'm inherently lazy. That's probably why I'm like really good at IT stuff, because I've always tried to find ways to solve problems that I can use the least amount of energy. It's probably also why I'm overweight. But I think about that like, ooh, man, knives is like one of those areas where there's no substitution for hard work, and it's hard. It's a hard barrier of entry to get into making a knife and making it well. And some people, relax into it pretty intuitively, not easy, right? But intuitively.
Yeah.
But knife shows and sales and marketing are all not easy. In like after you get the knife done, you got to sell it, and like it's not hawking it, it's selling it, and you put all this energy into it, and it's like you're the worst critic of your own work, and you also don't want to give it to like some idiot or whatever the case may be. I don't know anybody who really treats their little baby that they've created as disposable, right?
Sure.
They love it, and they want somebody to own it and care about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's difficult because you got to convince somebody that you are not, and your knife is not ephemeral, and that it's valuable, and that's kind of difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's true. But a lot of times people are buying based on the person. You know what I mean? It's not just the material thing. I mean, it's I had and I'm sure you have too. But I had one guy that he said, "Man, I'm buying a knife from you." He goes, "Just based on who you are."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I was showing him pictures of some of the stuff that I've done and been able to do with a bow. He goes, "Yeah, I'm buying a knife based solely on who you are." And I said, "Well, this is what I've got." He picked one, and he goes, and I said, "Well, do you want a shirt? Do you want a hat?" He goes, "I don't want any of that." He goes, "I just, I'm happy to meet you, and I've enjoyed visiting with you. I like your energy." He goes, "Yeah, I'm buying this knife." So, okay, cool. Yeah. That had never happened before. Normally it's like, hey, it's a sales pitch that, where I talk about the knife and why I designed it the way I did. And so I'm basically, it's a sales pitch. You're telling people, man, hey, this is what it's about. This is why I did this. And fit and finishes, is this, and then they decide whether they're going to buy it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's a great community. It's a great group of people. And at the TKG, that's one of the things that we're trying to work with our guys, especially like the newcomers. We want to make sure those guys, get a good base of information when they're first starting out, so that they're creating quality work.
Yeah.
In fact, like this weekend, I think we judged, either 3 or 4 sets of knives. And we talk to the guys. I mean, it's not just, hey, you passed, you fail. We sit down and we highlight, hey, this is where you need work. This is what you can do to improve. This is wrong. This is why it's wrong. And, you're not going to learn everything from YouTube. There's guys out there, well, I'm self-taught. Nobody's self-taught. Everybody goes to YouTube, or everybody, reads articles or buys books. Yeah, I mean, and so, it's important that these guys understand when if you ask me, where can I do, or critique this knife for me? What can I do better? I'm going to tell you. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You know what I mean? I'm not all diplomatic. I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what you got to do, and how to do it. And some guys, I mean, they get their feathers ruffled. It's ruffled up. And then some guys are pretty cool. Some guys take it in stride. I talked to a couple of guys this show that were just, a year and a half into their journey. What do you think about this? It's okay. Yeah. You want me to critique it? Yeah. Okay. I said, look, I'm going to shoot you straight, dude. And, oh, yeah, that's what we want, And so one of the guys, he had his arms folded. He was in a bad mood. He didn't like it. The other dude took it in stride. He goes, yeah, man. He goes, I'm going to work on that, and I could tell he's going places. They're both makers, but I could tell the guy, the attitude right there tells you who's going to succeed. You got to be able to take some criticism and then build on that, because you're going to come out at the other end. You're going to come out better. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, no,
sorry, man. I know I flew way off track. Sorry.
No. There's no tracks. This crazy train goes off. My daughter loves Crazy Train, and so she used to, as a kid, sing "I'm going off the rails on a crazy train" over and over and over again. And so life is like that, though, right?
Sure.
And the podcast is like that too. Everything is tangential. But no, I've never really, I've never understood the facade of life, right? And what I mean by that is people saying that they want a thing, and when you give it to them, it's not what they want at all, right? The criticism, for instance, or mentorship in some way. No. I just want you to say what I want you to say, but through your mouth instead of mine. I'm like, that's not, that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you're either asking me my personal opinion because I'm a fully formed adult and, I can do that, or, if you want an echo chamber or, somebody like that that's just going to bounce off your ideas back at you, then I'm not that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing. To get somebody who really wants criticism is difficult. Like if you look at my knives and everything, I think also like I have a level of maturity to know that there are certain things that you look at from your eyes and perspective that is opinion based, and there's other things that are fact based. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like your impression of things is important to me, but I also have to synthesize that and take it for what it is. You could be making an assessment over my knives and execution, or you can be presenting an opinion on what you think is more valuable out of that than others. And I think everybody needs to be able to have the maturity to take information in and not get upset, but use that in a way that makes sense for them. Like
Sure.
Not everybody pees the same stream.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You got to be able to process it your own way. But that's once again, that's why the disclaimer. I said there, I tell them, hey, look, don't get butthurt. I'm going to shoot you straight. If I see something that is clearly, and a lot of it's function stuff.
Yeah.
There's a difference between aesthetics and function.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Your plunge lines may not be the same. The knife's still going to cut.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a high performance knife, there's certain things that need to be happening there.
Yeah.
Right? Edge thickness. Number one thing I see is, guys taking knives and primary bevel sitting at 40 thousandths, and then we're gonna make a an obtuse 45, 50 degree secondary bevel, and now it's sharp. You're making chisels.
Yeah.
And you know what? You may need to make chisels. The guys over in Border Patrol, the one of the first things that I handed out was too thin, and if they start to pry open doors or something crazy, or what do you call those dashboards?
Yeah.
Well, the knife's not going to last if you leave it real thin. You want a robust beater type knife for that kind of work. So you got to bill for the application.
Yeah.
The first time somebody asked me to make a tactical knife, I know absolutely nothing about tactical. I'm not in that. That's not what I grew up in. I mean, I just had no clue what was important in that arena. But because I use dark colors and because I use Cerakote, yeah, man, I want something tactical. Okay, cool. So what did I do? I went and found some freaking pipe hitters, man. I said, hey, you've been overseas, and I sit there and talk to spec ops guys.
Yeah.
Okay, what's important? Well, I need to be able to come like this, and I need to hold the knife like this, and I need to feet gear. Okay, so that means we need a 3-to-1 ratio. We need a long, sharp, pointy eye, knife.
Yeah.
With a decent edge and good edge holding. And you start to put things together. This is what the recipe is going to be for this knife. Hand it to some guys that know what the hell they're doing, and let them check it out. Say, okay, yeah, you did good, or hey, you need to change this, or maybe a little more drop in the heel here. So this, and I'm like, why? What's the point of that? You're not going to use it as a chopper. It didn't make sense to me. But once they present it, how it's going to be used, and the reverse grip is important, and all. Okay, I got you. But do I like making tactical knives? No. I like to make hunters.
Yeah.
Can I make a tactical knife?
Yeah.
I can. But,
Well, yeah, and then the air quote tactical, right? I mean, it's like lots of ways where like I've kind of rebranded some of my knives as specific things, but back in the day they were just hunting and caping sets. But now, because guides are hired a lot for that stuff, they they get a good set and they're not really going out and searching the market for a ton of caping utensils, right?
Right.
So I had to break it apart and name it things and change the utilization of it. I mean, they're all coming from a hunting type of I guess requirement. Thinner edges, sharp, durable. But it's interesting sometimes when people come up to a table and ask, well, what's this for? And I am, I think in the context of cutting implements and tools, I look at something as how versatile is it? Not always does it have a specific purpose.
Yeah.
The chef knives, it has parameters that are required in order for it to be a chef's knife, right? But you could also be in a horror movie and be a hacker slasher.
Sure.
It's like it could do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit more imagination. It's actually really surprised sometimes how many people come up and ask what is a specific purpose, and I'm like, yeah, you could do this or you could do that. Like these are some versatile blades.
Sure.
But I also like experience in some ways teaches you to look for specificity in things, but also be able to find the versatility in it once you kind of get that one thing that that you need.
Yeah.
And I think in blade design and also the production of it, when you're first starting out in knives, it's really hard to understand form and function and to be able to critically assess that for yourself.
Yeah. And I know I catch that on a lot of these knives that I get to judge. They're very rectangular, almost square, with just the slightest rounding of the edges. And I said, do you guys know why a screwdriver's either, a square or slightly squared off like this? Well, yeah, because you got to torque it over. I said, okay, so why are you putting a screwdriver handle on a knife?
Yeah.
I mean, can your hand hold it? Yeah, our hands are freaking capable of molding themselves to whatever. Use it for 2 or 3 hours cutting several deer open or something like that, or a couple of hogs, and you're going to be fatigued. I said, it's not, I've studied ergonomics a little bit, and I paid attention to what feels good, what doesn't fatigue you. A lot of that is from buying freaking box store knives that you absolutely hate to use.
Yeah.
They're so thin, and so, I mean, they do that for manufacturing. Oh, it's going to be easier to manufacture and slap these on and go. But they feel horrible in your hand, and your hand fatigues and your hand's constantly fighting the slip because there's no positive stop, nothing. So you're always a little worried. So now you're clenching up on the knife. Man, if your knife is designed well, you can hold. A lot of time I'm cutting with 3 fingers on it.
Yeah.
I'm doing this, and I mean, just go. And we had a deer lease. You're gonna laugh about this. It was a bow hunting lease. And we had an MLD for the first time, and our biologist came in and says, "Hey, Jack, you guys got to get after it. We got a lot of deer to shoot." And I'm thinking, what are you thinking? 25, 30 deer. And he's like, "No, you have to shoot 80 deer this year.
Oh.
And I said, between 4 guys? And he says, yeah. I said, oh, man, okay. So, man, we really went to work that year. I'm talking by myself. I think I shot 12 that year.
Oh, my God.
And I would bring a buddy, and I'm like, shoot, just start shooting. I mean, I would shoot 4 or 5 deer. Well, every night we'd come into camp, and I hunt with 4 great guys, man. I mean, I'm blessed in that regard. And we're, lifelong friends. And, man, we come in and, okay, who wants to cook? I'll cook. Okay, so, one guy's getting a fire lit and getting things ready. Another guy's getting the food going, and 2 of us are out there cleaning deer and getting after it.
Yeah.
And it's a race.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we got to the point where we could get a deer skinned and in an ice chest in under 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Quick. And sometimes faster than that. I'm thinking, it may have even been at one point we were doing it 2 deer at a time in 30 minutes.
Mhm.
But you're going to learn about knives quite a bit when you actually put them to work.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to really realize, okay, so did I design a really good knife or did I not? I have a model that I call the I call the Kestrel, and it's designed as a skinner. It's a drop point skinner, and the only place that it's weak is in the reverse grip when you're trying to do like a zipper cut.
Mhm.
There's not a really good place to put your thumb, and I point that out to people. I'd sit down and I point it out, But I have another blade that I designed called a Saker, and that absolutely does that.
Mhm.
So, pluses and minuses, different knives. You get kind of specific. Well, you get to sell more knives or you get specific.
Yeah.
These do different jobs. But, I've learned a lot, just being in the field. I've cleaned, and I couldn't tell you how many gar I've cleaned, but it's up there. It's a lot. I mean, whatever number you think it is probably more than that. Because,
Yeah.
I had 14 years on the water, 10,000 plus hours on the water easy.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, 5,000 people fish with me.
Wow.
And, it's like, okay, you stop counting. I don't want to know, man.
Yeah.
But 5,000 some odd people hunted with me over those years, So that's a lot of fish to clean. And you're going to find out what works and what doesn't because you're day in, day out, And those are not little fish with little fillet knives.
Yeah, no, yeah.
You got, these are, 7-foot gar with great big, tough scales. And, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't real quick.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a really funny story. I had this guy fishing with me in the past, and a year later he shows up on the same water in his own boat. And that's fine. He's paid his dues. He came out fishing with me. He knows the spots.
Mhm.
And I was out there cleaning a bunch of tilapia, and the man shows up, and I recognize him. Say, hey, how you doing? We visit a little bit, and he pulls a gar up there. Kind of like he's trying to show me up. He pulls his big old gar on the feeding table, like a 6-foot fish. And I'm sitting there watching him, and he pulls out a brand new Cutco, big old serrated Cutco. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, and I'm still cleaning my fish, and I'm minding my own business. And Aaron, there's only one way to really clean it. I mean, there's several ways to skin this cat, right? But what you don't do is try to cut across these scales.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
And here's this guy sawing away with
my
this
God.
Cutco across the scales on this gar. And I look at him and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, this guy's over here poaching on my water. Should I tell him and should I not tell him? And I'm kind of fighting with myself. And I said, you know what? I'm going to let him go just a little bit more. I'm sitting there trying to cut through the scales, like, straight down on him. And I'm just sitting there. And eventually, I said, okay, I give. I can't watch him do that anymore. I pulled my fish aside. I said, hey man, let me holler at you. I said, can I show you how to do that real quick? And he looks at me and goes, I know what I'm doing, Hand. I said, yeah, I understand that. I said, can I show you a faster way to do it? And, I got a little more nicer, a little diplomatic about it. Let me show you a faster way to do it. And he goes, yeah, okay. I said, watch this. And then I took my knife and I stuck it. The scales they lay down. And I stuck the knife under the scale. I went up, and then across. And he goes, oh my gosh. And I said, yeah. I said, your Cutco's wrecked. I said, I don't know if you know that. Your Cutco's done, right? He goes, they're pretty tough. And oh man, it's done, isn't it? I said, yeah, you're done. And then we got that thing open. I helped him get it all the way open. And, you take the back straps out, and they're giant back
Oh,
straps, But it was so funny. I remember thinking to myself, I don't care whose knife you use. The best knife I've ever made in my life wouldn't have lasted any more than that cut go because, it's not a saw, But anyway, it was funny, man, so many. I could go on and on, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point in time, we'll have to do a larger episode where we could talk more about that. Cause I think that there's a lot that can be pulled from experience like that. Like, I mean, I've hunted and fished almost my entire life, but not to the volume you have. I've like skinned and cleaned like hundreds of animals, but not to the level that you have. Like there is a vein of experience that comes with age, but then also with being in a position where you're just exposed to that a lot. I mean,
day in, day out.
Yeah. There, I mean, it's a perfect example is Jake McCoy was I forget who he was working for. So he got into doing knives and worked at a company, grinding blades and things like that, like going through an apprenticeship program.
Sure.
And he had to see way more blades than everybody else does, And so him going like to out on his own and whatnot and doing his thing has produced a much better blade, but he's seen it more than everybody else.
Sure.
So like, it's not like me who like, learns through a lot of like trial and error and, a longer period of time. He was doing all that same work. He just was doing it in the context of where he was getting like drinking from a fire hose.
Sure.
And now he could put out a superior blade, he put in his dues.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that, Grace Horn said there's no shortcuts in this thing.
Yeah.
Like there really isn't. Like even if like you can make a superior hunting or fishing blade or whatever, you still put in a lot of time and R&D before all of that was said and done.
Oh yeah, of course. And I've taken lessons, man.
Yeah.
I've actually taken lessons with J.W. Randall. I started going all the way to Louisiana for that.
Yeah.
And money well spent. J.W. breaks things down for you very easily. It doesn't bog you down in technical jargon. It's basically, hey, this is why this is going to work. This is why we do this. And you know what? I enjoy his type of teaching. I relate very well to it.
Yeah.
And so as my mentor and teacher, I actually did my, I did my Journeyman Smith test at a hammer inn that he hosts every February.
Oh yeah.
and let me tell you, I was nervous, of my performance test. And you're familiar with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners are, but the performance, can I tell them a little bit about it? Okay. So the performance test, you have to cut a free hanging 1-inch rope. You have to chop through 2 2x4s, and then the knife has to shave.
Yeah.
And then after that, it has to survive a 90-degree bend test. And I got to do that in front of about 100 people.
Oh my goodness.
And dude, I was sweating bullets. I mean, literally sweating bullets. And it was cold. And dude, I'm like, oh my God. JW, I don't know if I can do it. He goes, man, you're good. He told me just, stay calm. You're good. And I mean, I got through it. Let me just say, I got through it, but I just remember it was traumatic. I was like, I wasn't so much worried about it failing as I was having to do it in front of everybody.
Yeah,
I think that was
if
the
it does
big thing.
fail, then everybody sees it.
And I've seen it. I've seen. I can tell you the names of the guys. I won't do that, but I've actually seen 2 guys detonate knives at JW's. And so, man, it's catastrophic. We go bang, and blades go in different directions and stuff. It's like, wow, that's harsh. And so, yeah, man, it's a cool journey. I'm very proud that he's been a mentor to me. But I have a lot of mentors. I bet guys like John Horgan probably calls me once a week, and we visit and we just talk, and he's a good friend. Harvey Dean, Johnny Stout, all those hammer-ins that I attended, those 2 guys, kind of molded me. The number one guy that molded my knife making, believe it or not, is Harvey Dean.
Yeah.
And you know what he did?
Amazing knife maker.
He dropped me on my head. I showed up with some knives to one of the hammer ins, and I had Johnny checking them out. I said, Johnny, what do you think? And Johnny's looking at it, and he says, man, this is journeyman, Smith level work, Jack. This is fantastic. And he just lifted me up, man. And I'm like, God, I can't believe that. Really, Johnny? He's like, yeah, man, you need to be doing more. You need to get out, get these knives out where people can see them. And I'm like, man, that's awesome, man. I'm just so pumped. Here comes Harvey Dean. What are y'all looking at? And I'm like, hey, Harvey, I said, I was just checking out some of my knives, and Harvey comes over. He goes, and I said, check them out. What do you think, Harvey? You want me to tell you? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, dude, he says, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So Johnny stopped, picked me up, and Harvey dropped me on my head, man. I mean, he just deflated my dreams and aspirations. I'm like, no. It's so, but it was great for me because it made me realize there's a whole other level that I'm not aware of. I look at that knife now, I kept it.
Yeah.
I look at that knife now and I can immediately see it. I was like, okay, how did I miss this one? If you don't know what you're looking for, you're never going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey Dean had more to do, I think, with me pushing than anybody else, because he told me straight up, this is what's wrong. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to fix this. You got to fix this. I didn't even know that I would, I can remember specifics, but it was so off my radar that I was like in shock at the time. Yeah. And I just remember being, oh my gosh. I remember telling my wife when I got home, I'm not talking about tears or nothing, but I was like, I can't believe this happened, and she's cracking up. She's like, you'll be all right, And sure enough, I've come away stronger from that time on.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this about it. When I actually tested for my journeyman in Atlanta with the fit and finish, the whole spiel.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to greet me when they let us in was Harvey Dean.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he wrapped his arms around me, gave me a big old hug. I'm proud of you. And I'm like,
thanks, Dad.
That was the journey, man. From the time he dropped me on my head to the time he picked me up, I was like, that was okay. And it was cool. Yeah. It was a cool minute, man. I was like, oh, okay, thanks, Harvey. And I just, I still get goosebumps from it.
Yeah, that's
but thanks, Dad.
Rad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think being validated is an important part of the knife making journey, and that comes from a lot of different places. But especially when you admire people and they've already done like amazing things, when you get that little nod, that's definitely rad.
Yeah. No, it was a moment, man. I was like choking up, and I was fortunate that my kid was there. He got to see it. Some friends. I had the crew guys that I run with, man, cheering me on and stuff, cool. And that was really cool. I felt bad for Jeff. I wasn't able to be there for his. I had stuff going on with my mom this year, but I would have flown all the way to Atlanta just to be there for Jeff, passing his journeyman, because he's been through a lot to get where he's at. His journey is something else. I'm sure y'all talked about that.
Yeah, we talked some about that.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's interesting stuff. I don't know. It's an enigma. The knife making, as much as it makes sense, it also doesn't make sense to me. And that's why I have to have like people like you on to talk about things, and like Jeff. And I think all of my guests help me to understand in a more sophisticated way that there is no, there's definitely wrong ways to make a knife, right? But when it comes to like where you take your journey, I don't think there's any wrong ways. You can make a lot of things and a lot of paths for yourself
sure.
in just this focal point of the industry, and it just makes me kind of wonder, where I want to go and what I want to do, and with more intent and purpose.
And not to interrupt you, but that's one of the first things that I did once I decided, hey, I want to pursue this a little more than a hobby. Right. I went to Blade and I said, okay, I'm going to find the niche. I got to find a niche that I can kick the doors into. And so I went to Blade within, like, I want to say it was 2017 or 2018. I can't remember 100%, but I decided, you know what, I got to look. And so all I did I'd blade that time. I wasn't shopping. I was actually looking to see, is there something, is there a niche here that I can fill that's going to be different, that's going to set me apart, that I can also, make what I like.
Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing there was room for color. That's why I started using Cerakote, using good, cool combinations, still build a quality knife, build something that it looks unique, but still is a high performance tool, and that's the thing, knives, you got knives that are tools, how it gets back to how they're going to be used. Knives that are artsy, you know what I mean? That are going to be, hell, probably never get used.
Yeah.
They're going to sit in a safe somewhere. Knives that are, straight up investments. People buy them things as investments. So, you got to decide where you want to be in the middle of all that, where, and also what keeps you excited about the next project.
Yeah.
I like challenges. I'm not scared of, every once in a while I get somebody to tell me, oh yeah, I want a kitchen knife. Well, let me send you to a kitchen guy. I'm not scared of making a kitchen knife, but right now, I'm not excited about making a kitchen knife. But there are certain knives that kind of draw my eye, and like, yeah, you know what, I can build one of those. So or like a dagger. It's a great example. I've never made a dagger. That doesn't mean I can't make a dagger. So that's kind of in my, okay, at some point I need to get serious and they try to make a dagger anyway for master's mat.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that kind of drive to try something new, and that kind of keeps things fresh, keeps things going, keeps you interested. You know what I mean? Keeps you pushing for better results. I'd love to sit down with Bill Burke and watch him build for a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a fun game, and also always continue to improve. And I'm taking classes, or I have a class with Bill Poor in December.
Well, that's cool.
And I already make my own Damascus. But Bill Poor, we're going to talk about pattern development, okay?
Yeah.
And how he gets from point A to point B rapidly. Anything you can do to cut time off. I'm very careful about my Damascus. I'm very careful. I like nice, crisp, high contrast Damascus. I'm, temperature, but what takes me probably 8 hours to build a billet, some guys can do it a lot faster time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm trying to always learn from people that are doing it better than I am.
Yeah.
So trying to grow in that regard.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I'm constantly on, I don't know, I'm on a quest to kind of find what I guess gives me the most purpose, if that makes sense for
Sure.
me. I mean, I've made knives, and I guess maybe some like switched from, fixed blades to some slip joints and like doing stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it can be dangerous at times to make a change without really thinking too much about it, because I've kind of ostracized my fixed blade customer base in pursuing pocket knives and retooled for pocket knives and stuff. And I kind of like, I still like the idea of making slip joints and doing stuff like that, but there's also a portion of me that really does realize that that kind of that trajectory I was taking with my fixed blades suffered some while I was kind of on this little walkabout. I'm getting back into the idea of going for my journeyman smith. So I'm an apprentice now, and we'll see what that looks like in 2 or so years. But it's stuff like that where I think that there's always room for growth, and there's always room for study.
Well, one thing that I've noticed in this is, there are guys out there, they try to master, they're not even trying to master anything. They're throwing too wide a net. I'm going to get really good and I'm going to be able to do this, this, and this at any given time. Like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
If you try to be the master of all of it, you're going to be the master of none.
Yeah.
Pick a path, try a couple of different things, find a path that you like, and then go run with it.
Yeah.
But if you try to, and I don't want to get too specific, but like let's just say for argument's sake, I'm doing hunting knives, and somebody throws, I'm going to try to make kitchen knives now too.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to try to make, liner locks. And then if you start doing that, you're never going to figure it out. You're never going to be really great at making any of those knives.
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta try to get a little specialized. And I think, the quality of your work's gonna show it,
Mm-hmm.
and your clientele is gonna, show.
Yeah.
You're gonna do better. Yeah, and some guys are real nitpicky, and some guys are not. Some guys, oh yeah, that's really nice, I'll take it. And they're happy with their knife. They don't give it a real look. I talked to several people this weekend about fit and finish. Fit and finish? What are you talking about? I'm like, well, look at the knives. I said, I'll take a Pepsi challenge against anybody that's here. Look at my work and look at anybody else's work that you want. You'll what's a Pepsi challenge? Okay, that's a different generation for, yeah, I get it, man. I'm sorry. I don't know what I could throw out there. So, that would help you understand. I said, but my work, if you look at my work and and this is what we look at, and how does it fit in your hand? Is it comfortable? Are there any hot spots? So you got to kind of educate.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that the Guild, we're trying to work to educate the public, much as we can. And also, there's a bunch of junk metal coming from overseas, and that, and the public doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
And but I sure love the look on their faces when you take one of those. Can we say Pakistani Damascus?
You can say it.
Okay, when you take a Pakistani Damascus knife and you whittle on it with one of mine, their eyes open up.
Yeah.
How is that possible? Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that is a thing. Is there's all of these. It's not just inferior heat treating; it's inferior steel.
Sure.
And it's done in mass production for export, and it comes from Pakistan, Wazirabad, and whatnot. I mean, it's very specific to a region where they just produce it all.
Yeah.
And all of those blades are not they're not better than butter knives. No. And any well heat treated, like well made blade will cut right through them without any real problem. And and there's a lot of people that think that, like in the Wazirabad mentality of picking up on market trends, they're really good at that.
Yeah.
And they're making stuff with like etched Damascus or real poor quality, and people are buying it saying, oh, it's Damascus. I'm like, yeah, I mean, loosely, right? Yeah. It's not high quality at all. And it doesn't put it on a Rockwell hardness tester and it's like,
in the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some in like the low 30s.
Oh man, I get guys, hey, can you sharpen my I bought it at the gun show. Nope.
Yeah.
I can sharpen it. I can sharpen the spoon too.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I will say is that there are like some people that get so like irate over Pakistani Damascus, they get a little bit racist. And I know that's like the real problem is it's not scammy, but it is kind of that way, right?
Well, yeah, man. But what happens is, have you listened to these guys pitch?
Oh yeah, several times, lots of times.
Yeah, I almost got into I don't want to say a full blown fight, but sure enough, an argument.
Yeah.
And this guy was telling me he have the best bladesmiths in the Houston area are making his knives for people, and I said, really? He goes, yeah. Excellent knives. I was like, okay. I said, well, you know what? I said, I'm on the Texas Knifemakers Guild board. I want to know who are these bladesmiths that are making your knives? Because I pretty much know everybody. Well, you wouldn't know these guys. I'm like, well, no, I would, because I mean, there's a good chance they're probably Texas, Knifemaker Guild members. And I said, I want to find out who's making your knives. Well, it went downhill quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And I don't know that I necessarily respect anybody who buys these knives and sells them as hand forged blades either. Like when I was like getting into selling knives, I'd go to some like not flea markets, but like down in South Texas by Kyle area, they have Wimberley has a once a month sale thing.
Okay.
And I was going there, and one of the first stalls was like all this cutlery, right, which is all import blades, and most of it was origins of Pakistan, right?
Sure.
And I can't tell you how many people walk into that thing and buy it.
Yeah.
It's like $30-$40, whatever, right? You buy it on Amazon too, whatever.
but by the time that they realize that that's not great quality, they've already bought 3 or 4 of them, and they could have
Oh
just had a
yeah.
custom blade for that. I mean, there's lots of good makers that I've seen at this show that have something for under $250, and like you look at the difference on like these scam knives, basically.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it's I can't say that there's room for everybody, because of that kind of business practice shouldn't really exist. It's just,
Exactly. And that's the thing. Is that what it does is it cheapens Damascus for everybody.
yeah,
Because you know what? You got that same customer. Like, well, I can buy them at the, over here for this much.
yeah,
Why am I paying you so much? You got to sit there and educate and explain.
yep,
I took an order this weekend for a very specific pattern. We went over a couple of different patterns and what I can do and what I have available and and we settled on ladder. Okay, I want ladder Damascus. Okay, you bet. And so we can get pretty specific with our patterns. Most of what you see coming out of Pakistan is going to be, of course, it's about the metals junk, but it's random if anything.
yeah.
Maybe twist. I've seen some twist over there.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, what it does is people walk around thinking, oh man, all Damascus should be this cheap.
Yeah,
And it's not, and it takes a lot of hours and a lot of work and a lot of discipline to keep that steel at the right temperatures. And so you're not burning
Yeah.
your steel. Yeah. You know the game, man. You've been
yeah,
around it.
I don't have. There's lots of aspects of knives that I just don't have any real answers for, and I don't know. Like, who cares what I think at the end of the day, except in the context of a podcast that gets internationally distributed, right? I think about that sometimes. Like, I have a little bit of a responsibility with the podcast to try to be fair and balanced. Like journalism is dead in so many ways, but what I'm trying to do is balance opinion out, right?
Sure.
And there's like the one area where I just I vehemently agree that it's a bad thing for us in America, especially, is the Pakistan origin Damascus and how it's affected us, especially in this rise of the forged blade, right?
Sure.
Back in the days of the guild. I mean, before the ABS was really a thing, people were having a hard time with the legitimacy of forged blades. And then we have like this shift where it's like, you get more out of a forged blade than you do out of a stock removal blade, and this back and forth and banter and everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because some of the best early knife makers in America, post 70s approximately, right?
Yeah.
They pushed it in both realms of forged and stock removal into areas that boggle the mind.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it's just interesting. It's interesting to try to unpack knives in a way that we could have debates for like years and probably ruin great friendships over some of those debates too. I always try to do it in jest and everything, but there's a lot to it.
Oh yeah. One thing that piques me about these guys, though, I mean, they're taking other people's work and they're trying to pawn it off as their own.
Oh yeah.
And so, as that's one of the, if we're weak anywhere, as as far as the TKG, that's where we're weak. We need to do more to educate the consumer, but we got to get the consumer to look at the TKG in the first place.
Yeah.
So like today, I had them say, "Hey, please announce that." Yeah, of course, what I wanted was a little different than what actually got put on it. But I said, "Hey, if you're, I told them, say, hey, if you're interested in knives and you want to learn more about knife making, go to the TKG booth." That's what I wanted them to announce. What they announced was something similar. It was a little washed down, but that's okay. Anybody that wants to learn more needs to come, to events, talk to people, reach out to other knife makers. Man, you have so many resources.
Yeah.
I'm available. People want to ask me stuff. I got guys, on a regular basis, hey man, I'm stuck. Okay. Come over here and we'll do this, or I'll come over and we'll figure it out. I forget what, Nate Tuna,
Mm-hmm.
you know him?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. He came over today and says, hey man, we need to do a collab on I got to figure out this battleship steel. I want to get this pattern. And he showed me a picture. I said, I got you, man. I said, we'll build it at my house. We'll draw it out. I got a rolling mill. I said, we'll get you on point. I said, but it ain't going to be worth a damn because you got battleship steel on your edge. She goes, no, we'll put a core in it. I said, done. They're like, as long as you're good with that. So we're going to have 3 colors of steel. It's going to look like camouflage, And so, that kind of, collaboration and fun and friendship where you can sit down and just reach out. You got to have that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you got, we all make each other better if we can figure things out together,
Absolutely.
And that's one of my favorite things about this gig, man. I mean, it's just, it's cool. It's cool in that, and some guys, I mean, even the guys that have some secret sauce formula or whatever, those guys, nah, man, do this. It'll look a lot better. And sure enough, man, I mean, you try different things or whatever. Or pattern development. That's another great one. You're trying to come up with something new. Oh, well, I don't know if you'll come up with something new, but you're trying to get to a certain pattern development, in Damascus. Man, you reach out and you talk to these guys, and some are tight-lipped, some don't want to tell you, and that's cool, man. I don't hold anything against anybody. Say, hey, whatever, no hard feelings. But some guys, yeah, man, you just do this, and John Horgan's helped me numerous times.
Yeah.
Of course we're buddies. We have that camaraderie, and he doesn't hesitate, and he's a mastersmith that makes, I don't know, $500 to $700 a day to come and learn from him. And I don't quote me on that. I mean, I'm guessing it's in that range. But super guy. I mean, I can't thank him enough for all the stuff. And man, one hand washes the other. I've tried to help him in every way that I can. But I still owe the guy more. But yeah, man, I'm blessed to have so many great role models to live up to, and I'm trying, man. I don't know that I'm ready to do Mastersmith, but if not this coming year, then the one after.
Yeah.
Because I feel like my fit and finish could get there as long as my patterns are tied and the same on both sides and the contrast is good. Yeah, I think I can get there pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the challenge of it. I may even test in February with JW again with my 300 layer Mastersmith, but we'll see.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Dude, and you want to hear something really interesting or funny? I don't know how interesting it'll be too, but I built one test knife for my journeyman knife. I forged it out, actually filmed the quench, and all that, got everything straight. And I kind of I never tested it. I never put the final edge on. I just kind of put it aside for a while. Then one day I decided to clean it up, and okay, it's, looking pretty good. Still had some hammer marks on it, but, nice and clean and light. Well, I made the thing too light. I mean, it was really light. Not kitchen sharp, not kitchen knife light, but approaching that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I think I made this thing too damn light, And when I had it finished, I walked out in the yard and I had some 2x4s there, and I don't even know if they were, probably just pine or something. Pap, 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 went right through them, and I checked the edge, no deformation, everything's 100%. And I had, Brett Noak had given me some 1-inch rope. And so I just, kind of haphazardly threw it over a branch in the yard. I just cut right through it like nothing. I said, "Oh, I'm good." That's all the practice I did to test I mean, literally all the practice I did. I cut through 1 2x4 and I cut or 2 2x4s. I'm sorry, I cut through 2 2x4s and I cut a rope once and I cut a rope twice. I still have the pieces, and I said, "Oh, I got this." And dude, I was wrong. I mean, when I got to JW's, the rope was different. It was a bigger rope, and he had this knotted freaking nasty. And I don't know if it's I don't know what wood it was, man. But
not builder's grade.
Listen, let me tell you, it took me. I think I have it on video, and I think it's north of 200 strikes to get through 2 2x4s because it was such a light blade. So I'm like, "Pep, pep, 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 pep," and I'm sitting there forever chewing through this, and it's embarrassing. I'm like, "Oh my god, everybody's watching." Pep, 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 pep. And so with all the strikes and everything that it finally took to get through that thing, I thought there's no way this is going to shave. There's no way. At the house, I did it in like 14 or 15 strikes. Out here at JW, I mean, I have the video. Like I said, I'm just sitting there. It looks like a woodpecker. And dude, I'm like, there's no freaking way this knife is gonna shave. And JW in front of God and everybody, he wears long sleeve shirts. He pulled it up and he left a 4-inch ball patch on his arm. He goes, "Whoa, that's sharp, buddy." And so I'm like, what? Right then, you can see it on my face. I'm like, no kidding. I just freaking, oh my God. And so, dude, when I'm like literally with bated breath sitting there on the pipe, waiting to bend this knife. And I'm like, there's no freaking way it's going to, I had never bent a knife before, and I'm like, there's no way this is going to come together for me. And sure enough, it comes all the way down. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh man, that's funny. I can't imagine. Well, I mean, that makes a hell of a story, doesn't it?
Dude, I was confident in every aspect of it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna build one. And then I'm just gonna. And everything came together so easy, and everything kind of just, I said, man, I got this. And then, man, oh my God, do I really have? I thought there was something wrong with my knife when I started chopping the 2x4. Like, what in the world? What kind of wood is this? Actually, you can see it on my face. I'm sitting there looking at it like, what kind of wood is this? And it was my fault. I knew the knife was light.
Yeah,
I knew it was light. And I should have. But I had never, I mean, I'm a hunter, man. When do I need to chop through freaking, if I'm going to chop through wood, I'm using an X. I had never had to chop through wood with a knife.
Yeah.
So I should have, in retrospect, I should have made it thicker, a little heavier duty, carry a little weight, a lot less chops. But if you ever see the video, it's on Instagram, I don't know, or some of it's on Instagram. If you ever see the video, you'll laugh your ass off. You see it on my face, and you can see how many chops it takes me to get there. Because I'm sitting there going like this, and there's little bitty chunks falling off, and I'm like, oh, I'm so screwed. There's no way this is gonna cut, dude. No way this is gonna cut. After 200 strikes, I'm like,
oh man,
this is gonna hurt. But yeah, no, it passed. So and that's the benchmark of a journeyman. You understanding heat treat. I felt that all that. I was confident in all that. But I didn't actually take the time to test and really find out, I was confident enough that like, I got this, but then when I got there, I started,
some variables change.
Yeah, variables change. You can bet that for my Mastersmith, I will have tested and built multiple knives. I can assure you.
Dude, that's hilarious. Well, I know that you got to get going. We're at the end of the show, and not only the podcast, but also the knife show. And we need to get together again and we'll talk more. Maybe go on a hunt sometime.
Sounds good, brother.
But I really appreciate your time and energy and the insight, because I think that's really important as people think about Texas and what we're doing here, to understand that we are all part of this thing that we're creating, and we need everybody in it and to be invested and to want to do good things to build up Texas knife making, and you're one important pillar of that, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Good Old Blades podcast. Remember that you are loved, and God bless.